Good Friday afternoon and welcome to 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzinski and Dan Lucero here with you until 6 o'clock this afternoon. And we've got so much to get to on the NFL front. The Chiefs versus the Raiders this weekend, the regular season finale. Plenty of college hoops coming up this weekend. Some major games in the Big 12, K-State versus Baylor, KU versus West Virginia, both of those on the road. We'll talk about those matchups coming up later on in the show. We'll talk to Matt Derrick, have what is wrong with you. We'll find our weekly winners. All of it is coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We would love for you to be a part of the show. As always, you can hit us up on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. You can also find us on YouTube. Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube handle, our channel, whatever you want to call it. Go subscribe if you haven't already, and that's where you can watch us. The comment section is open. Let us know whatever you are thinking about during the show today, either via text line or via the YouTube comments. We'll get to the NFL's playoff procedure for 2022, technically, coming up here in just a moment. I think they did a mostly good job. But, I mean, it's the best they probably could have done given the situation, to a degree. We'll get to what I mean by that and all the specifics coming up here in just a moment. Zach Taylor, we can tell you, is not thrilled about one particular situation, the head coach of the Cincinnati Bengals. We'll also talk Chiefs versus Raiders. Bottom of this hour, Matt Derrick, our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider, is going to join us to preview the matchup and give his thoughts on how the Chiefs come out of the new contingency plans from the NFL for postseason planning. What he thinks of the outcome for the Kansas City Chiefs. I think it's pretty good. We'll also get you our Chiefs keys to the game coming up at 4 o'clock today. Usually we do that at 3 o'clock on Red Fridays. We're going to do it at 4 o'clock today because of the big news with the playoff changes. We'll also find our What Is Wrong With You winner for the week. Dan's going to have you for the back half of the show. He'll take a look ahead to all of the big NFL action, including maybe not the greatest list of quarterbacks to ever play. I will say this. I'm extremely happy for Skylar Thompson that he is going to get a chance to start this week. I think that's very cool. He's gotten to play a lot for his first season in the NFL as a 7th-round pick. Very, very cool. The rest of the list of potential starters for teams that don't have anything to play for. Holy cow. It's ugly.
A lot of guys that began the season 4th on their team's depth charts or not on the depth charts at all. A lot of guys who began the month of December probably 4th on their team's respective quarterback depth charts if they were on the depth chart at all. And I said on Tuesday's show, we are with Sam Howell taking the first snap of the Dallas-Washington game. Actually, I guess before that, because Nathan Peterman's going to start for the Bears.
For the Bears, yeah.
And that's an earlier game. But that'll be
funny.
The 65th different starting quarterback we've had in the NFL this year, a record for a non-strike year.
That's crazy, and not necessarily in a good way either. So we'll get to the NFL weekend. Hey, look ahead as well to KU and K-State basketball coming up this weekend. As I mentioned, KU takes on West Virginia. K-State takes on Baylor. I think those games tip off at the same time, if I'm not mistaken, or one's at 3, one's at 5.
I think they do. I think they're both at 5, and I think they will both be on ESPN+.
Get the split screen out. Got to have at least one of those be the smart TV. Maybe you're airplaying one of them.
It's interesting that ESPN does not allow you to split screen within the app yet.
Yeah, that's pretty dumb.
Give me a picture-in-picture.
You'd think. I mean, honest to God, you'd think that'd be smart business. I know they've got the technology for it. I know for a fact they have the technology for it. But you'd think that'd be good for business because generally, oh man, I want to watch a bunch of games at once. I would love to watch Stony Brook versus New Hampshire tonight. I am dying for some Seawolves basketball, but I'm a little more interested in KU West Virginia. Oh, well, I guess I can't watch my America East. You're spending all that money to televise that stuff and to have the rights. Why not allow people to watch multiple games at once?
Yes. Like you've got all of the Spanish soccer. Why can't I do a La Liga quad box on a Saturday morning at 9 a.m.? Why won't you let me win and prosper in that way? Why can I not have the quad box going of both Kansas and Kansas State and then perhaps another Big 12 game? And hey, who knows? Maybe have a little gambling action on the Southland Conference on Saturday night. Who can say? That's between me and God. But I would like to be able to watch all of them on one television.
Yeah, man, I don't understand.
If you can do it on YouTube TV, you used to be able to do it on PlayStation View, RIP and peace.
Can you do it on YouTube TV now? I
think,
know they were going to introduce it.
I think they're moving towards having that technology if they have not already introduced it.
I had never gotten any indications, and as a YouTube TV subscriber, I would very much like to be able to do that. So let's go on Google. Let's pick up the pace here. But yeah, it's dumb. So you're going to need multiple screens if you want to watch both KU and K-State. Or maybe you do want to do, if you want to go full sicko mode, you do like, I'm going to watch KU, mute it, and then I'm going to listen to the K-State radio broadcast on 580 WIBW.
That is an option.
By
the way,
insane, but you could do it.
Oh, and by the way, those games will be starting as roughly midway through the third quarter of Chiefs Raiders with the number 1 seed in the AFC on the line.
So you're going to need 3 screens then.
Hey, I know a guy who's got that set up in his basement.
I was going to say, I will let my wife know we are bringing both auxiliary TVs into the living room coming up for Saturday and Sunday this weekend.
You can come to my den, but it's BYOB. Bring your own beverages.
Generally that's okay. As a tap water drinker, I think I'll be all right.
We do have ice.
Regard.
We do have ice.
So that is all coming up on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. We appreciate all you guys for watching, for listening, for hanging out with us today. Again, the Big O Tires text line is open. The comments on YouTube are open. In fact, we do have one comment here from our guy Ryan. I believe Ryan is our resident Omaha listener. Shout out to the 402.
Omahan, yeah.
Omahan, is that what it is?
Yeah, Omahan.
Omahan.
Yeah. Omahan.
But he mentions that in our area, I believe he is correct about this. The Jets game is going to be on Jets-Dolphins, which means Skylar Thompson in the viewing area, which is pretty exciting if you are looking forward to that matchup. That'll indeed be the Fox early game coming up on Sunday. Not a lot of intrigue in that one, but Miami, I guess, is in the playoff hunt.
Yeah, Miami is winning in. They're the one team among the 8-8 crowd that if they win, they are in no matter what anybody else does. They are the team that controls their own destiny.
I will say, it'd be super cool if Skylar could lead them to the playoffs. Biggest game of the year, gotta win, and he ends up having a good day and Miami gets in. But honest to God, I am kind of rooting for Pittsburgh to get in. I just love Mike Tomlin. And the fact that they have even gotten to this point with that roster and freaking Matt Canada coaching their offense, pretty incredible. Almost completely improbable. But we'll talk more NFL coming up later on in terms of the actual matchups and the games. But we do want to get to the big news today. The NFL owners have finally improved a resolution to figure out the contingencies and what will happen if certain outcomes occur this weekend to determine what the seeding will be in the AFC playoffs for this year. 3 teams are still in the hunt for the AFC number 1 seed. It's the Buffalo Bills. It's the Kansas City Chiefs. It is the Cincinnati Bengals. Going into week 17, the Bills were in the driver's seat. They controlled their own destiny. Had they beaten Cincinnati and then won in week 18, they were getting the number 1 seed regardless of anyone else. If the Chiefs won out and got a Bills loss, the Chiefs were going to get it. The Bengals needed some help, but if they beat the Bills and then the Chiefs lost one of their final 2 games while the Bengals won out, they would have gotten the number 1 seed. Of course, the Damar Hamlin incident, which, by the way, phenomenal news on that front, that he was actually able to speak to his teammates via FaceTime last night. That is absolutely incredible. And could not be happier for him and for that Bills team and all of his loved ones. But with that game getting canceled, we have now had to, as we understand, get some contingency plans put in place to figure out how are we going to seed the playoffs with 2 of the best teams in the NFL, 2 of the top 3 seeds in the conference playing one fewer game than anybody else in the league. They had to figure that out. So here is what the resolution passed by the NFL owners looks like. The AFC Championship game, that is point number 1 in this resolution. They are going to play it at a neutral site if one of a couple different things happen. So stay with me. I know it's radio. I know it's sometimes hard to follow a lot of instructions and whatnot, but I'll try to be as clear as I can. So if the Bills and Chiefs both win or tie in their game this week, and both teams make it to the title game, so if we end up with Chiefs-Bills, maximum best record in the AFC Championship game, they will play that at a neutral site. We do not know where that neutral site will be. We do know it's not going to be Detroit. It probably is not going to be Minnesota, although it theoretically could be, especially if you're a believer that the Vikings are frauds. They do not know where that game would be played, but that would be a neutral site game. If the Chiefs and Bills both lose and Cincinnati also loses, plus the Bills and Chiefs make it to the AFC title game. So if the Bills and Chiefs both have the same result this weekend and they both make it to the title game, they will play it at a neutral site. They will not play it at Arrowhead. They will not play it at the Ralph. New Era. No, it's not even New Era Stadium.
Highmark Stadium.
Highmark Stadium. Yeah, the Ralph. I'm calling it the Ralph. They're not paying me otherwise. Then it will be at a neutral site instead, not the two home stadiums.
It's always been Rich Stadium to me. That's how I remember it.
Entirely fair. The other third scenario is if both the Chiefs and Bills lose this week and Cincinnati wins, and either, and the Chiefs make it to the AFC title game against either the Bills or Bengals, it'll be played at a neutral site. I know that's a lot to keep tabs on. If you want a visual of it, NFL.com has this written out. There's a link to it on their front page.
I have a graphic. I'd throw it up on the screen if I knew how to do that.
I can help you out. Dan, send me your graphic.
Okay. I'm gonna DM you the tweet is what's gonna happen here.
Okay.
And then you can put the graphic up. But yeah, Tom Pelissero had it, and
so if you are watching on the YouTube stream, you will be able to visualize this. If you're not, if you're just listening on the Sports Voice of Kansas, again, hopefully I did a good job of explaining it to you. And again, I will direct you to NFL.com. They have this all clearly listed out and bullet pointed. So it makes a decent amount of sense. And again, like we've been saying, this is the best they could do in this situation for the AFC Championship game. Because is it necessarily fair to say, hey, the Chiefs played one more game, the Bills possibly would have gotten that seed, but they didn't play, so they can't get it. Tough luck. Probably not. I honestly, and maybe I'm biased because we cover the Chiefs, although I don't think it's a pro-Chiefs take. I think it would have been okay to just say, hey, look, sorry, we're just going to go with win percentage, and the Chiefs are going to get it, and that is what it is. Because I think the further away you get from normalcy, the more that things are going to get complicated and not make sense.
Mm-hmm.
But if you wanted to try to mitigate the competitive advantage as much as possible in the AFC Championship game, this is probably the best they could do.
Yeah, I think that's correct. I also think that it is pretty clear that nobody benefits more than the Chiefs do.
Agreed.
Like, the Chiefs really come out ahead in this because they did not control their destiny. And we have the graphic up now on the video. If you're watching, it obscures our faces, so this is the best it's ever looked on the graphic, but we are still back there, still kind of bobbing around a little bit. But if you're watching on the video, you can see a very helpful graphic, all the scenarios and what they would mean. So if you want to check that out, that's up there on the YouTube. Kansas City did not control their own destiny as far as being the number one seed, and now they do. Like, that is the biggest thing that happened with that game being declared a no contest. Kansas City went from not controlling their own destiny, from needing help from either the Bengals or the Patriots this week, to being able to clinch the number one seed on their own. And the biggest advantage of being the number one seed is not the location of the AFC Championship game, though that's not nothing.
Mm-hmm.
It's certainly rather be at home than on the road, but the Chiefs are when you have the number one team, when you have the best team, you should be as capable of going on the road and winning as you are of playing at home and winning. And the flip side of that is you're as capable of getting beat at home in an AFC Championship game, like has happened to the last 4 years to the Chiefs, as you are of winning it on your home turf, which has happened 2 of the last 4 years to the Chiefs. So the real benefit, though, is being the number one seed because you don't have to play next week. That's the biggest deal. If you asked, and we talked about this yesterday when there was a rumor floating around that they might let whoever the number one seed is choose what they would rather have, the bye or home field in the AFC Championship game. And then the number 2 seed would get whatever the number 1 seed did not choose. Like, you're taking the bye 10 times out of 10. That's way more important because of the simple fact that it's one less hurdle you have to jump over to get to the Super Bowl. It's one less game. It's one less game where something can go wrong, where somebody could get hurt. It's one less game you have to play. The extra week of rest, I'm sure, is valuable as well, but there's nothing more valuable than the bye. And the Chiefs now control their destiny for that bye when they absolutely did not before. That's a big deal, and that's why they benefit more than any of the other teams. Cincinnati's kind of on the other side of this now.
Yeah.
Where Cincinnati's in a spot where theoretically they could win the division by win percentage, even if they lose on Sunday to Snoop Huntley and the Baltimore Ravens.
Yeah.
But in a scenario where the Bengals had played and lost last week, the Ravens, they'll feel hard done by because they have no chance to win the division now, not even on percentage points, even though in a scenario, again, where the Bengals had lost to the Bills and then the Ravens won on Sunday, the Ravens would have won the AFC North because they would have had 2 wins over the Bengals and would have had the tiebreaker. But you're going by win percentage, so the Bengals have essentially locked in that AFC North. Well, now the league is saying that if you end up playing Baltimore in a playoff game, we're going to determine where that game is by a coin flip. We're going to go to a coin flip.
Which is pretty dumb. Like, I'm with Zach Taylor. Zach Taylor has said, look, why did that part of it get changed? I don't think we should have changed that part of the rule mid-season. And honestly, I kind of agree with him on that. Again, I've made my stance clear that I would have just said, hey, look, I'm sorry. It sucks. I understand. I feel bad for you, but we're going to go with the normal policy win percentage. Let's stay as close to normal as we can. That's how I view it. And I view this situation the same way that if the Bengals win and they're in and they get that spot, I think they should get to have home field.
Yeah.
So, yeah, I definitely feel like they got the short end of this.
And you know what? They can take care of it, though. They control their own destiny as far as that goes. If they don't want something to come down to a coin flip, just go beat the Ravens.
Just go win.
Yeah, just go win. Go beat a backup quarterback and a team that can't score points anymore. Go win that game and you don't have to worry about it.
Yeah, the Ravens. Ugh.
We have a question from Jeffrey in the YouTube comments.
Yes, and I wanted to get to this because I think it's, again, understanding some of these scenarios are very hard to follow. So Jeffrey asks in the YouTube comments, and appreciate reaching out and clarifying here. If the Chiefs win out, they could not have been caught by the Bengals, even if the Bengals had won out. So why would the Chiefs have to play the Bengals at a neutral site? The qualifier here is that would only happen if the Chiefs lose tomorrow and the Bengals win.
And the Bills lose. Because the scenario would have to be Cincinnati jumping into the number 2 seed, which only happens in that one scenario, I believe. It's the only scenario that exists in which Cincinnati becomes the 2. And then they would have lost the opportunity to maybe claim that 1 seed. So of all of the scenarios where Kansas City plays Cincinnati in the AFC Championship game, they would all be at Arrowhead, except in the case of all 3 of those outcomes losing, all 3 of those, frankly, unlikely outcomes to happen for Cincinnati winning's not unlikely, but Buffalo and Kansas City both losing on Sunday, on this weekend. Those 2 things would have to happen and a Cincinnati win to make it where Kansas City, Cincinnati would be at a neutral site.
So in layman's terms, if the Chiefs win tomorrow, there is no scenario in which they'd have if the Chiefs win tomorrow, let me restart. Any championship game they play against the Bengals would be at Arrowhead. If the Chiefs win tomorrow, that scenario would not come into play. It would be guaranteed at Arrowhead if both the Chiefs and Bengals made it to the AFC Championship game. So that does benefit the Chiefs again in that regard. It would only take 3 different moving pieces all going in one specific way to end up with Chiefs Bengals being at a neutral site. I do think though, and our pal Mark brings this up, this is going to be a crazy weekend no matter what. This is one of, I think I've noticed this since the 7th seed was instituted, and maybe it's just anecdotal evidence, but it feels like there's even a bigger gap of like have and have not in the last week of the season over the last 2 or 3 years. Like there's always a couple of teams that play each other that just aren't in the playoffs, especially when you play a divisional foe. But this year it feels like a handful of teams have everything on the line. Like Chiefs have something to play for, Bills, Bengals, Ravens, NFC, the Packers, the Lions, the Seahawks, teams that have like everything on the line. And then just a massive amount of teams that absolutely nothing matters. Like, we don't care. Like this game means nothing. The Giants, even though they could spoil the Eagles' season to a great degree and could potentially knock the Eagles out of the 1 seed, Brian Dable's not playing anyone this week. Like, screw it. We don't care. There just seems like there's a lot of that.
Who
this
is
year.
the Giants' backup quarterback? Is it Tyrod?
I believe it's Tyrod Taylor. Yeah, I think it is.
Starting quarterback number 67, perhaps? A little bait and switch?
Maybe. Good for him. I always like Taylor. I mean, I know he's not like great, but he got uber screwed in
really did.
LA. Yeah, he is the backup. In fact, he's the only other rostered quarterback that they have.
I was going to say this too. The other way in which the Chiefs benefit from this is they can't be the number 3 seed.
Yes.
That was an outcome that was a possibility had Cincinnati won out and the Chiefs lost on Saturday. They were looking at a possibility where they could tumble to the 3 seed. And then not only do you have to play either Allen or Burrow, I guess in that scenario it would have been Burrow, or Allen rather, in the divisional round. You got to go to their house to play that team. You have to go to Buffalo in that scenario. That is off the table for the Chiefs. Wherever they play in the divisional round, if they are in the divisional round, whoever they play, it's going to be at home. And the Bengals lost that opportunity to really control whether or not they move up to the 2nd seed. So I get the Bengals' frustration because none of this really had anything to do with them. They were kind of like the Bills, in wrong place, wrong time as far as all of this goes. And I get their frustration. But to keep it simple for the Bengals, if they win, then they don't have to worry about where they're going to be playing any of their playoff games, and they might get to a neutral site in the AFC Championship game if they do run into Kansas City. And for the Chiefs, now their destiny is in their hands in a way that it wasn't when we entered Monday night. And for the Chiefs, they should feel grateful. They should feel fortunate. Grateful is maybe not the right way to put it. Really kind of a crass way to put it, and I apologize. But they should feel fortunate that that opportunity is now in front of them. And I would imagine they would be primed to take advantage.
One quick thing before we have to get to a commercial break here. We alluded to it earlier. I do want to bring up who we will actually be watching this week. And again, Dan will look ahead to the biggest storylines, biggest matchups this weekend coming up later on in the show. The early window on CBS in the entire listening market here, we're going to get Patriots versus Bills. That is the game we are going to get. In fact, most of America is going to get that game on CBS early. Your early Fox game here in the majority of our listening area, you're going to get Jets-Dolphins. So the Dolphins, that game is win and in. So the Jets have really been struggling. The Jets are starting Joe Flacco in that game. Yeah, Joe Flacco.
Super Bowl champion.
That's the funniest bit on TV. Tim Kirkchin's Baltimore accent. And Miami is going to start K-State great Skylar Thompson. Miami wins. They are in. Afternoon games on CBS, a little bit of a dud in our area, but it's the AFC West matchup. Chargers versus Broncos on Sunday. The Chargers can move up in seed depending on how things go, so they could end up with the 5 seed.
Or they could end up not having anything to play for. If the Ravens lose, then the Chargers will have locked up the 5 seed.
Good point.
And maybe they send Chase Daniel out to face. There's a reason the Broncos are 3-point favorites. There's a lot of thought that could very much end up happening. That's an instance of the Vegas line telling you a little bit of inside baseball there. By the way, the rest of the country for CBS gets Giants Eagles in the late window. Are Tom Brookshire and Pat Summerall coming back from the grave to call that game?
Maybe
they should.
NFC
on CBS. It doesn't sit right, man.
No, I know. It's wrong. It's weird and bad. The Fox late window, so afternoon on Fox, we are going to get Dallas at Washington. Dallas does have something to play for. Honestly, I mean, all 3 games have some sort of meaning. Dallas-Washington will probably be the best game of the group. Sam Howell making his debut for Washington in that one. We do have to take a commercial break. We got plenty more to get to on 580 Sports Talk today. On the other side of this timeout, we'll play Change My Mind. Matt Derrick also joins us later on this hour here on 580 Sports Talk. I would like to bring up briefly before we get to change my mind that Barbara on the YouTube comments, Sports on 580 WIBW is our YouTube channel, mentioned earlier on when I said for college hoops this weekend, you could watch KU and then listen to the K-State broadcast with the TV muted. Barbara said that's actually what she did on Tuesday night. I feel vindicated that someone did that.
Love that.
So shout out to you, Barbara, and anyone else who is doing that. I said that's the sicko thing to do. I mean that complimentary. I hope that's clear. Like when we talk about this is the sicko game or like sickos do this, I'm absolutely making that's a compliment.
No, because we are sickos.
Yeah.
And we welcome members into our sicko tribe.
That is a positive thing. I do promise that. All right, it's time to get to some Change My Mind real quick before we get to Matt Derrick. Dan, change my mind. K-State wins this weekend. They are in already to the NCAA tournament.
If they go on the road and get another win against a top 25 team, if they got 2 top 25 road wins in their first 3 conference games, I said 8 conference wins was going to be what they needed to get them into the NCAA tournament. They will need 5 from their final 15, and they've only played 1 home game. Yeah, they are on a glide path at that point to the tournament, and we stop talking about them in terms of are they going to get in, and we start talking to them in terms of how high a seed are they going to get. Joe Lunardi has them at a 4 in his latest bracketology that came out yesterday. Yeah.
Oh, wow. I know he mentioned he thought they'd move from 7 to 6 all the way up to a 4.
Yeah,
wow.
That came out. You'd already headed out yesterday, but he posted his bracketology before last night's action started, and yeah, he had K-State as a 4 seed. So yeah, we start talking about what their seed is going to be if they go to Baylor and win.
And I agree with that. Because the other thing, too, you only need 5 in your next 15 to make it in. I mean, if you already own wins over Texas, Baylor, a pretty decent West Virginia team, I'm really confident you're going to get 5 more wins in your next 15 games. So I think they already would have enough, like, good wins to qualify and to be there. So I would say they absolutely get in. By the way, that bracketology, I'm sure you mentioned this yesterday, now only has 8 Big 12 teams in.
Yes.
Oklahoma first 4 out, Texas Tech next 4 out. I will join you in the camp. When it's all said and done and it's Selection Sunday, I will be surprised if Tech is not a tournament team.
For Change My Mind today, K-State wide receiver Malik Knowles declared for the NFL draft. I am not draft guy, but Malik Knowles will not only be drafted, but play a role as a rookie in the NFL. Change my mind.
Yeah, I would agree with that. I think that, I'm not sure if he is ever going to be like number 2 on the depth chart wide receiver in the NFL, but he's got enough speed, enough elusiveness. Teams will find a way to use him. He'll play on special teams right away.
Yeah, like a big 4 and a possible kick returner. Like,
yeah, no, he'll
kicker punt guy. Yeah.
I mean, think of a guy, and Malik's got more size than this, but think of a guy like Ray McLeod as an example. Like he was actually a really good player at Clemson. He's never been great in the NFL, but he's been a decent 3rd or 4th receiver for years now. He's returned kicks and punts forever. He's carved out a real nice spot in the NFL. And again, Malik's bigger than that.
Yeah, and he's a threat to make a big play. And Knowles' size, I think, will help him at the wide receiver spot, too.
Yeah, I would agree. I think he'll make an impact right away. Teams like guys like that, especially if you get them 6th, 7th round. Absolutely. We'll take a timeout. Matt Derrick joins us next for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider on 580 Sports Talk. We are headed to Kansas City to talk to our good friend Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com, our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider. You can find all of his tremendous work covering your Kansas City Chiefs over at ChiefsDigest.com and find him on Twitter as well at Matt Derrick. And before we get to the Chiefs and to the NFL playoff scenarios this week, I do want to bring up a follow-up from last week's show. At 12:01 a.m. on January 1st, I looked at my phone, I felt it vibrate, and I got a text from the one and only Matt Derrick saying, yes, indeed, he did make it to midnight. So, Matt, congrats to you for making it past midnight on New Year's Eve.
Thank you very much. And I can't tell you what time I went to bed to try to actually, go to sleep. I wasn't asleep, obviously, until after midnight. But I did go to brush my teeth when Noah Ruggles missed the field goal. So can't tell you what time that was, but I can tell you what in sports moment time it was.
Hey, that honestly, for people like us, I think that's going to mean more than the actual time and date and all that anyway. Oh, yeah, I remember when that kick missed by 4 zip codes. I remember that clear as day. So, no, that was a very eventful New Year's Eve. It's going to be a very eventful weekend around the NFL, too. Matt, before we get to Chiefs Raiders, because we will preview that matchup here momentarily, I do want to ask, what's your overall takeaway from the NFL's contingency plans for the playoff scenarios this week? The fact that, well, in the AFC North, there might be a coin toss to determine a home playoff game at some point. But for the Chiefs to, in all likelihood, be in the driver's seat to have potentially home field advantage and to certainly have the bye in the first round of the playoffs, it feels to us like they came out way ahead in this. What do you think about the situation?
Yeah, I think they did as well. I mean, it's really, the only way that the Chiefs are not going to be hosting the AFC Championship game is honestly, it's on them. I mean, if they don't end up doing it against Buffalo and have to play that game at a neutral site, I mean, that's better than some of the alternatives. So, and if the fact that the Chiefs have the first round bye and would have to play an AFC Championship game, a hypothetical one against Buffalo at a neutral site, I think that's a huge benefit. I mean, just getting the number one seed, period. And, and looking at the odds, I mean, the fact that the Chiefs didn't have to have a game played. If you looked at Monday night, I think that their odds went from having the first round bye being 44% to 83% without having Buffalo lose and not having the Chiefs play a game. That's huge. I mean, the notion that they were able to get the first round bye without a Buffalo loss or with their own win and winning out is a big deal. So, I mean, I think that flips their way. The fact that you have to accept the possibility that there's a scenario where you might have to play the AFC Championship game on a neutral field, I think that's okay. I do believe that the Bengals got the worst end of the stick. I'm not sure there was any good way to resolve that between the Ravens and the Bengals, because I think one way or the other, one of those teams was going to feel, it was not in their favor. None of this is ideal, but it's not an ideal situation. I think the NFL probably did it about as equal as they could. It's not perfect, but I think it's about the best option you could hope for without forcing these two teams to play this game under very difficult circumstances.
And I'm right there with you. And I think for me personally, and I was saying this earlier on in this hour on the show, Matt, that I personally would prefer they stay as close to quote unquote normal as possible. I would not have hated it, honestly, as much as I would have felt bad for the Bills in particular. I wouldn't have hated it if they just said, look, we're just going to keep it business as usual. If the Chiefs have the best winning percentage, they're going to end up getting the number one seed. I know someone ends up screwed there, but I feel like that's about as close to normal as you can get. I feel as though the further away from that you get, if you start talking about moving the playoffs back and we're going to have a quote-unquote week 19 or we'll stagger the start of the playoffs, I feel like if that happened, at some point that just becomes too big of a mess that's not worth it if you're the NFL.
Well, and if that's the case, then honestly, the first round bye has no benefit for anybody. I mean, everybody's getting a bye. And I don't even know if the 2-week bye is that big of a deal. I mean, I think 1 week alone is enough. If anything, a 2-week bye that the Chiefs would end up having possibly as the number one seed would be, I think, a disadvantage. So, yeah, I don't know that was ever really an option. I mean, I think it would have had to affect more teams for that to be a consideration. To me, I think it would have been, more of a situation where if this game had to be played, it was going to be on the Bills and the Bengals to play on some short rest time. And I don't think that would have been what they want to do either. So without playing that game, I think this is about the best scenario that they can come up with. It is not perfect. I don't expect everybody to like it, but I think the Chiefs came out of it pretty well.
We are talking to Matt Derrick of ChiefsDigest.com. He is our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider, and he joins us every Friday here on 580 Sports Talk at this time. Matt is on Twitter at Matt Derrick. To the on-the-field stuff with the Chiefs, they are coming off of a 27-24 victory over the Denver Broncos on Sunday. And at this point, Matt, is it as simple as saying that the Chiefs are as good as the turnover margin will allow them to be on a week-in, week-out basis?
I think you can absolutely make that case. I mean, I might make a broader case that they are as good as their ability to get off the field, because I bring into that, how good they can be on third down and whether or not they're getting teams to settle for field goals instead of touchdowns. But turnover margin is at some point probably going to be what determines this team's playoff outlook. I mean, if they end up in the playoff game where they're -3 in turnovers because they turned the ball over a few times and couldn't create any of their own, it's going to be a problem. Just conversely, I could see this team making a Super Bowl run because all of a sudden they start getting some turnovers in bunches. They're +7 in the postseason and things just look great and they're rolling over everybody. Yeah, I mean, the turnover margin at this point is a big difference between, I think, this team playing some close games and this team, winning some games by double digits.
The Chiefs defense was asked to come up with a clutch stop on Sunday, and they did. And as so often has been the case, it was Chris Jones who made that play. I know that we realize it. We watched the Chiefs. We've watched every down of Chiefs football this year, but do you think there's a broader appreciation for just how great a year Chris Jones is having?
I think there should be. I mean, I really am hoping that he's going to get the first team All-Pro, mention that he deserves this year. I don't think there's any doubt. To me, this is the best season of Chris Jones' career. I think he's the best defensive tackle in the league this year. I don't think there's any doubt about that. With competition, you still make the case that Aaron Donald's a better player, but this year he was not. I think Chris Jones deserves it. And I don't know. I still don't think that he gets as much credit. I'm not sure even in Kansas City, including national, on this. I mean, if Patrick Mahomes were not on this team, I mean, I think Chris Jones and Travis Kelce would be the superstars, and he should be. But I certainly think nationwide he still doesn't get the respect, because I think there's probably some people who would say that there's other better defensive tackles, and I just can't make that case this year.
The Las Vegas Raiders are the opponent for the Chiefs on Saturday afternoon at Allegiant Stadium. Obviously, these two teams have already seen each other. Chiefs had to rally back from a 17-0 first half deficit and have a miscommunication and collision between wide receivers, not to mention a 2-point conversion stop, to thank for escaping that particular tussle with the Raiders with a victory. But how much different is this Raiders team with Jared Stidham at quarterback and all of the injuries? How much different are they, or do you expect them to be in terms of this matchup with the Chiefs on Saturday?
Yeah, they're going to be a lot different, and it has some injuries too that might play into it. We know whether or not they choose to play Josh Jacobs, how much Devontae Adams plays. That could absolutely determine a big part of this game. But even if you look at what the Raiders did last week against the 49ers, they went against type. I mean, it's a different quarterback. It's a different concept. And Josh McDaniels put together a game plan that was really designed to keep the 49ers off guard. But I think at the same time, when you look at these situations where a team late in the season goes to another quarterback, and especially now that the Raiders are completely out of it, and they're just kind of experimenting and trying to see what they can do with that Derrick Carr and finding out about some young guys, that can work for a week. When you do something that's completely out of character and a team hasn't seen before, but it's on film now. So nothing that the Raiders did last week against the 49ers are going to surprise the Chiefs. The only way they can surprise the Chiefs is if they've got another bag of tricks that they can pull out. And I'm just not sold that that you can do that 2 weeks in a row and come up with two completely divergent game plans that can keep these defenses off guard. So, like I said, unless the Raiders have a few more tricks up their sleeve, I think that the Chiefs will be ready for Jarrett Stidham. I think they'll be ready for the Raiders offense. And then it's just going to come down to whether or not the Raiders can actually stop Patrick Mahomes this time.
Just a couple more questions for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs insider, Matt Derrick from ChiefsDigest.com. You can find him on Twitter at Matt Derrick, and, of course, all of his great work at ChiefsDigest.com. Matt, if L'Jarius Sneed is not 100% tomorrow, what is the Chiefs secondary going to have to do as a group to slow down Devontae Adams? Even if Sneed is able to go and play to the majority of his abilities, what are they going to have to do to slow down number 17 in silver and black?
Yeah, if you don't have L'Jarius Sneed, then I think you absolutely have to look at how you can bracket that guy and put two people on him at all times. And the scary thing about that is that if you do that, it means that Waller, the tight end, is going to be getting single coverage a lot, and that's going to be a favorable matchup for the Raiders. So, but I think you have to. I mean, I think you're absolutely going to have to do that, and if that's the case, I mean, the Raiders do have other places to go. It's just a matter of can they put together a game plan that takes advantage of that. And with Jarrett Stidham at quarterback, and I don't know. I mean, I'm not told that it can happen 2 weeks in a row, but I think you're going to find out if L'Jarius Sneed doesn't play, those three rookie corners are absolutely going to have to step up. But I think you're also going to have to get a big step up from Brian Cook and Juan Thornhill. I think that you're going to probably have to see the Chiefs playing a lot of dime if they get into a situation like that, because you're going to have a safety help out with Adams, and you're probably going to have a safety looking at Waller too. There's different things you got to do, and hey, maybe Steve Spagnuolo will get some tricks up his sleeve for just that scenario. But I don't know that right now I would want one of the Chiefs' young corners having to take the task of taking on Devontae Adams one-on-one.
Is Sneed the most concerning of the four questionable players, also including Joe Thuney, Harrison Butker, McCole Hardman? Is Sneed the biggest concern of that group?
I believe so, because I mean, we've seen it. The Chiefs have had to play without Joe Thuney, and certainly it's a drop off. But Nick Allegretti is more than capable, so to me, that's not a huge deal. The Chiefs are adding Matthew Wright to the practice squad, so he'll probably be a practice squad elevation for tomorrow. If for any reason Harrison Butker can't go, Matt Wright. I mean, he's not Harrison Butker, but he's reliable, so I don't think that that's a huge loss. The Chiefs have been playing without McCole Hardman, so having Kadarius Toney back, that helps out. Now, you're not going to have Sky Moore, so that's an issue. But, yeah, I mean, you going down the list, I don't think there's any doubt. I mean, L'Jarius Sneed is the biggest concern, simply because you need his leadership. You need his ability to play the number one receiver on the other side. Because if not, you're going with the youngsters. And those guys, hey, they've done it for a period of time, but they haven't had to do it for a full game yet.
Out of curiosity, Matt, I know the answer. I'm wondering if you do. Do you know what the Chiefs are against the spread this year?
Off the top of my head, I do not. I'm assuming it is not good.
You are correct in that assumption. They are 4-11-1 against the spread this year. That seems crazy for a team that is that good. Like, usually you win a lot of games, you cover a lot of spreads. And I know that, gambling is not everything and spreads are not everything, but that's a very unique trend. So with that in mind, the Chiefs are favored by 9.5 in Las Vegas this week against Josh McDaniels, who is probably desperate to have some sort of saving grace at the end of his season, and Jarrett Stidham, who to a degree is probably playing to determine what the rest of his career looks like. Do you think the Chiefs can win by 10+?
I mean, I do. I certainly, to me, one of the reasons why they have a hard time going, covering the spread is because the spread's just been crazy high all year long in some of these games, and that's hard to do. So, yeah, but this game, I think they will. I'm not sure that the Raiders can do it 2 weeks in a row. I think a lot of the teams around the league are going to be checked out this week, and it's going to be hard. Chiefs have a lot to play for. Andy Reid is not going to let this team have a breakdown, a letdown. So I think they get it done pretty comfortably. I'm going with the Chiefs 31-17.
Do you like the Chiefs to make it to the AFC Championship game?
I do. I mean, I think I'm pretty bullish on this team to make it all the way to the Super Bowl. I don't know if I'll take them to win the Super Bowl right now when the playoffs start, but I think they're the favorite in the AFC because I think that the road is certainly going to have to go through them, and there's a very good chance that the road's going to end up going through Arrowhead too.
Nobody covers the Kansas City Chiefs better than Matt Derrick. He does it over at ChiefsDigest.com. You can also find Matt on Twitter. His Twitter handle is @MattDerrick, and he joins us every Friday, bottom of the 3 o'clock hour, for our Herman's Meat and Smokehouse Chiefs Insider. Matt, enjoy the Saturday football this week, a Sunday to just get to enjoy the rest of the NFL action, and we'll talk to you coming up next weekend.
Sounds like a great plan, guys. Take care, everybody.
That is Matt Derrick, best in the business when it comes to covering the Kansas City Chiefs. If they weren't already one of the two favorites to make it to the AFC Championship game, I don't know how they're not with they getting the first round bye. assuming they win this weekend.
Yeah, you get that first round bye, you get a week to heal up, and the home field in your divisional round game. Yeah, the number one seed is a huge advantage, and it's not always the end all be all. Like, remember last year's AFC number one seed was the Tennessee Titans. Like, they weren't the favorite going in, but a lot of times if you're the number one seed going in and you have the track record at home that the Chiefs do, and the playoff experience. I mean, these guys have been to 4 straight AFC championship games. You have to factor that in as well. I think that does make them the favorite.
We'll take a break for the national and local news. We've got our Chiefs keys to the game coming up to lead off the 4 o'clock hour on 580 Sports Talk. now, 4 o'clock hour of 580 Sports Talk on this Red Friday afternoon. I'm Brendan Dworzinski. He is Dan Lucero. We're with you until 6 o'clock today. Dan's got a folder on our work computer network of like best of clips from show history. We were reminiscing about a few of them yesterday. We forgot the time, and I think this might have even been before me, when Jake once called you Dan Lucerno.
Yes, it was intentional.
Oh, was it intentional?
Yes, it was entirely intentional because I had gotten mail addressed to me at the station, and it was addressed to Dan Lucerno. And I believe it may have been from Alpha Corporate. I was pretty new to the company at the time.
That's pretty funny. I was going through that folder recently, and I had not heard that one before. I didn't know that was intentional. That's very funny.
100% intentional on his part.
As was Britt back when he used to run the show, playing My Maria by Brooks and Dunn. Back-to-back commercial breaks.
I believe I threatened to kill him on the radio. Yeah.
You did. It wasn't even really a threat. It was just a direct, like, I'm going to do this.
Yeah. Well, there was no threat. And I was somewhere less than 100% serious, but I was north of 0% serious. Let's just say that.
Coming up here in this 4 o'clock hour, Brendan Dworzinski, Dan Lucero with you. We'll get to our Chiefs keys to the game here in just a moment. Chiefs Raiders coming up tomorrow afternoon. Steve Levy, Louis Riddick, Dan Orlovsky on the call. Thoughts on that, crew?
Riddick and Orlovsky, I think, are both really good. Levy, as a game caller, I can take or leave, but the analysis should be on point. I think Riddick's really good in the booth. I wish he had gotten more time in the Monday Night Football booth. I obviously understand why he didn't, but I think Riddick's really sharp, and Orlovsky, I think, has the ability. We know he does really good tape breakdowns, like on NFL Live. Like, his ability to do it fluidly during the game will be interesting to see. But no, I think it's a good booth. It could be worse.
I'm fine with Levy. I think he's got kind of a fun personality. The actual calling, I mean, you're right. I agree. It's fine. I love Louis Riddick. I really like when Dan Orlovsky is breaking down the game. When suddenly you ask, like, hey, give me an opinion about this specific player, that's when I have to turn the TV off, because I can't. He is meant to be a film guy. Like, I can't do the opinion-based stuff. But
I feel like he's really been able to hit his stride now that he no longer has to bear the cross of being that one quarterback who ran out of the back of his own end zone for a safety.
That's true.
Jimmy Garoppolo took an 800-pound gorilla off of that man's back, and I feel like that's probably enhanced all things about Dan Orlovsky's life.
That happened in a college game, a bowl game too, didn't it?
That sure did.
Yeah.
Oh, man, who was it? Was it Washington State? No, it wasn't them.
Oh, no, man, it might have been. It might have been. I think I might have been watching with my wife, who's obviously not obviously, but who I've talked about before, as a Washington State grad and a huge fan.
I know. I got
saw
up. It happen. I think it was that game.
I got up off the couch and said, "No, he Orlovsky'd." I think it was Cam Ward at WSU. Oof. Sorry, Cougs. So that's to be your broadcast crew for the Chiefs. We'll preview that game in just a moment. We've got What Is Wrong With You, and we'll look ahead to the rest of the NFL action going on this week. You can hit us up and let us know whatever you're thinking about any of the stuff we're talking about on today's show on the Big O Tires text line. You can hit us up there at 785-272-9429, or the comment section is open on our YouTube live stream as well. Shout out to everyone who's watching and listening today. Our YouTube channel is Sports on 580 WIBW. Go subscribe if you haven't already, and the comments are open for anything you want to share today. In regard to the Orlovsky, capital T, the Orlovsky, Matt in the YouTube comments says that's still not as bad as the butt fumble. I don't know. I might disagree with that, honestly. Like, yeah, it was bad. That's the funnier play. But Dan Orlovsky just ran straight out of the end zone. Yeah. He was so scared of Jared Allen, he just kept running backwards.
He thought, surely there is sanctuary the further I go back. No, there is only 2 points for the Vikings.
The play-by-play guy was so... He just felt so much remorse for Dan Orlovsky. Like, oh, man, this kid, this poor idiot, just ran out the back of the end zone. That is an all-time funny clip.
We've all been asked to do things we weren't qualified to do. For Dan Orlovsky, just happened to be quarterback in the NFL.
Real quick, before we get to Chiefs Raiders, I also wanted to ask this. So the neutral site potential AFC Championship game, the potentially neutral site game that would be played in the AFC Championship, we ran through the scenarios earlier on. Roger Goodell gets the final say on it. He has not announced what it would be. We only know of a couple stadiums it can't be, whether they're other potential host sites, so teams in the postseason. Can't be Arrowhead, obviously, or Highmark Stadium in Buffalo, or potentially Paycor Stadium, Paul Brown Stadium in Cincinnati. Where would you put it? This can be a funny answer or a serious answer. Where would you put it?
So my serious answer, it looks like Indianapolis is out. Apparently they're hosting like a volleyball tournament or something at Lucas Oil Stadium, which that's wild. But apparently that's what they've got going on the weekend of the AFC Championship game. So that's out. Another domed stadium like Detroit, I think, would be a decent place to put it because you want to be equitable. You don't want to put it in a place that's going to be really hard for one fan base to get to, but relatively easy for another. Like I saw one report, they might put it in Pittsburgh, which
is a lot easier for one team to get to than the other.
Much, much easier. But if you wanted to do it outdoors, like, sure, you could do it in, I mean, I don't think Pittsburgh, maybe you do it in Cleveland, or you could do it, I don't know. You should do it somewhere cool. You should call like colleges and be like, call University of Michigan so you can play at the big house.
That'd be cool.
Or, do something like that. Like, I know, put it in Vegas, or you can put it in Detroit. You put it in a dome. You take weather out of the equation. But both teams are outdoor stadium teams. So I feel like playing it outdoors is probably fine. Like, I don't think that advantages or disadvantages either team. My non-serious answer is I would like to see them play it at Black Sox Stadium in Greencastle, Indiana, home of the DePaul Fighting Tigers, where the stadium overlooks an old cemetery.
Ooh.
Yes.
You could get some real good shots of that, like for the bumpers going in and out of commercial breaks.
Yes, you could.
One of these teams' playoff hopes will lie here after the final horn. My serious answer, Lambeau Field.
I'm with that.
Because even if the Packers are in the playoffs, even if they go on a miracle run, they cannot host.
Right.
They will not host any playoff games. Yeah. They can only be the 7 seed. Buffalo and Kansas City, both about equidistant-ish from Lambeau. Two teams that play outdoors. Put it there. You're going to get awesome scenes. You know the crowd is going to be great because fans of those two teams will come and locals will go. I know for a fact there is nothing else to do up there. I've been to Green Bay, Wisconsin. There ain't anything going on in late January, early February, okay? You'd get an awesome crowd and awesome scenes. My non-serious answer, Bennett Field, Western Springs, Illinois. I had someone tweet at me today. He was playing his turkey bowl on Thanksgiving on that field. It's NFL ready. Turf is ready to go. There's a big water tower next to it. You can put the NFL shield on it.
Yeah.
Boom. Bennett Field.
Here is I thought this was a Fuego take, but I have seen it bouncing around other corners of Twitter today. But I wholeheartedly believe that this is a trial balloon for a future NFL Final Four weekend where both championship games are at a neutral site, one on Saturday, one on Sunday.
That is why I have been opposed to the neutral site. Like, I get why they're doing it. I, honest to God, almost hope that we don't get to that point because I don't want that. Because the scenes of conference championship games at home sites are so cool. Like, the Super Bowl itself is already so sanitized most of the time.
Yeah, it's very corporate. Like, it doesn't feel like all of the other football games that come before it in the season, right? It feels like a bunch of people in suits. It doesn't have the same kind of atmosphere that conference championship weekend. Conference championship weekend is the best weekend in football for me. Like, I like it more than I like the Super Bowl. And I think winning a conference is every bit almost as meaningful as winning the Super Bowl. And the chance to, you're either doing it in front of your home crowd and the scenes that result from that, or you're ripping the guts out of 75,000 people rooting for the other team, and then there are scenes that result from that. But I love conference championship weekend the way it is. Apparently, there was somebody who did a really interesting Twitter thread. Apparently, Lamar Hunt always had the idea of a neutral site Final Four weekend for the conference championship games.
And look what happened now. Lamar Hunt is dead. That's horrible. I shouldn't have said that, but it's Friday. Whatever.
Yeah, that'll teach him.
That idea stinks. Lamar Hunt had a lot of good ones, not that one. That one is bupkis. No. Throw that one out. I shouldn't have said that. I apologize to the Hunt family. Anyway, let's get to Chiefs Raiders before I really put my foot in my mouth here. We'll do our keys to the game. I'm going to have you go first because our second keys kind of intertwine, and I think yours goes better first. So why don't you lead with your first key today?
Well, my first key to the game is that the Raiders have a terrible secondary, and they're down to essentially one pass rusher in Max Crosby. And I don't know how much Matt Derrick talked about this at the end of the 3 o'clock hour. The Raiders are going to dress everybody, but like, how much are they going to play their vets? Like, how much are they going to play their high dollar guys in a game that means absolutely nothing for them? Certainly it means something for the Chiefs, and there's some value in competitive integrity, I suppose, in playing your vets. But like, if they give Max Crosby a few snaps off here and there more than normal, like, that would not surprise me necessarily. I say all that to say that the Raiders' pass defense is bad under normal circumstances, but it ought to be ripe for the picking. And Patrick Mahomes, a guy who always seems to bounce back when he has what he considers for himself a subpar game. You look at his numbers from last week and they were awesome, but he had that hiccup in the third quarter where if he was a golfer, you'd say his swing got away from him. He just lost his footwork a little bit, missed some throws he should have made, felt compelled to apologize to Marquez Valdez-Scantling after the game for costing him 2 touchdowns. I think Mahomes, with something to play for, motivated to atone for those mistakes, not just the footwork, but also an interception thrown in the end zone. I think Mahomes is going to have a monstrous game, and I think the conditions are right for him to do just that. Indoors on a fast track against a woeful pass defense in the league's worst secondary, just light them up.
I'm going to go with the Chiefs secondary for my first key to the game. Shutting down Davante Adams. Now, you're not actually going to shut him down in all likelihood because he is the best receiver in the NFL. He's a record setter. He's leading the league in touchdown catches this year. He is, since 2016, averaging 12 touchdowns a season. He is remarkably good. And you need to make sure you take him out of the game, because what did Jarrett Stidham do last week? Stood at the line. Where is 17? That is where the ball is going. He is going to catch passes. We're going to throw to him a lot. And you should. The ultimate safety blanket for a young quarterback, an inexperienced quarterback, the best receiver in the NFL. You have to take him away. If you get beaten by Mac Hollins, so be it. That happens. You get torched by, hell, honest to God, even Darren Waller, who's not, he's been better the last couple of weeks. He's not as good as he had been in the last couple of years because he's been banged up. In fact, he wasn't all that super great last year either. You're willing to live with that. You cannot let 17 beat you. Double him, put extra tension on him. You do the zone man matchups where you play essentially zone to half the field, man to half the field, whatever it takes to try to take him out of the game. I think you can win if you end up with Mac Hollins catching 10 passes. I think you can win with some of the other guys. Seth Roberts still there catching passes for the Raiders, whatever jamokes they've got.
Foster Moreau.
Yeah, Foster Moreau. He catches 10 passes. Hey, tip of the cap to you. I think the Chiefs are going to be just fine if that happens. If Davante Adams is catching that many passes, he's probably putting up outrageous statistics. Do not let that happen.
Because at least 2 of them are going to the house, right? Last week, 7 for 153 and 2 touchdowns.
The first time these two teams played, 3 catches, 2 touchdowns.
Yeah.
With over 100 yards.
I think the Chiefs will be acutely aware of what he's capable of doing. But the big plays, they need time to develop, right? And that was the strangest thing about the Raiders 49ers game last week. Jarrett Stidham was not sacked. The 49ers, with all that pass rush ability that they have, they didn't get a finger on Jarrett Stidham. Mm-hmm. I won't be surprised if the Chiefs are a little more aggressive, send 5, send 6, make Stidham make some quicker decisions and take away some of those longer developing plays that generally end up in good results if you get Davante Adams down the field. Because you give him long enough to beat you, he'll beat you.
Absolutely he will. He's done it for years.
So my second key to the game, I mentioned this when we had Matt Derrick on last hour. At this point for the Chiefs, what it comes down to for me is if the Chiefs weren't turning the ball over, they'd probably have the same record that they do, only we would think of them as the juggernaut that their 13-3 records suggest that they are. It all comes down to taking care of the football. When the Chiefs do that, we have seen them do that precisely one time in the last 11 games, and that was an utterly dominant 60 minutes football against the Seattle Seahawks in which it never, ever for 1 second looked like the Chiefs could lose. In all these other games against inferior competition, including Sunday against Denver, the Broncos forced 2 turnovers, took advantage of those turnovers, and the game was in doubt longer than it should have been. The outcome was in doubt much longer than it should have been. It all comes down to turnovers for the Chiefs. And to me, that's what this game will come down to. If the Chiefs value the football, if they take care of it, they're going to score, and they're going to give the Raiders fewer chances to score. And I think when you just lay the cards on the table like that, which offense, given essentially equal opportunity to score, because that's what you're doing if you don't turn the ball over. If you punt the ball back to the other team, then they've got to drive the length of the field. But if you turn it over inside, you fumble a punt in the red zone, then you're giving the other team a layup. So on equal footing, which offense would you expect to move the ball more effectively, to score more points? It's the Chiefs every single time. So for me, it comes down to turnovers. And if the Chiefs are able to take care of the football or win that turnover battle, they're going to win this game, and probably handily.
And my point that I think really filters off of that is to just avoid the stupid mistakes. Do not kill yourself with self-inflicted wounds in this game. And yes, that is turnovers just in general. Bad reads in the end zone that turn into interceptions, things like that. Avoid those. The fumble, if you're Isaiah Pacheco, 2 hands on the ball in this game, that kind of thing. But it comes down to special teams as well. And I think that's more where I'm focusing here with this idea. Missed extra points, fumbled punts, things like that. Bad holds by Tommy Townsend. You cannot have those kinds of things in this game. That latter point specifically, if you've got a backup kicker in there, and Matthew Wright, we know, is not exactly Jan Stenerud, okay? You're going to need to give him a little bit of extra help. You can't be having those little mistakes that take 1 point, 3 points. Give it away. It's a 4-point swing. Whatever, you were going to kick a field goal, they end up with a touchdown. Well, in fact, that would end up being a 10-point swing. You cannot have those kind of moments because, again, this Raiders team, they're not exactly back against the wall, but there are, I think, a handful of guys on this team who are trying to prove, hey, I'm worth it. Like if you're Jarrett Stidham, hey, I'm worth a look. I would like to start. I would like to play quarterback as a starter in the NFL.
And they deserve a ton of credit for that. The last thing in the world I thought we were going to see last week was the Raiders put forth that kind of effort for Jarrett Stidham and for Josh McDaniels. And they did. And I'm not going to assume that they don't have one more effort like that in them. Now, like I said, is it possible that some of the veterans, some of the higher price guys have their snap count cut just a little bit to try and ease the burden on them in a game that means nothing for them? That's certainly possible. But as for the Cancun on 3 effort I thought we were going to get from the Raiders in week 18, I don't think you can count on that.
And these guys know what it's like to play against the Chiefs. They hear what people say. They know what this game is like. They're going to be ready for it. Do not kill yourself with the dumb mistakes. With that, big Chief picks. We're in a similar vein here. Pass catchers for both of us.
Yeah, it's been a little quiet for Juju Smith-Schuster since he suffered that concussion against Jacksonville. He hasn't had as many big games since that happened, but I think he's going to have a really good matchup in this game. And I think a lot of rhythm throws early on for Mahomes are going to end up in Juju's hands and then also in the hands, as they usually do, of your big Chief pick. So I like Juju for a big game, maybe get back in the end zone this week.
That would be a good momentum play going into the postseason to see him get a little bit of positivity and a little bit more production. I'm going to go with Travis Kelce, though. Trivia question time, Dan. What team does Travis Kelce have the most touchdowns against in his career?
Is it the Raiders?
It is the Las Vegas Raiders. He scored 11 of them in 17 games in his career against the Raiders. I'm going to go with him. He is factor number 1 for this offense outside the quarterback. Obviously, I think he's going to have a solid day at worst, a great day at best against this terrible Raiders secondary. So give me Kelce as my big Chief pick. I'm going to play the trends with my winner and cover picks for this week. I'll say the Chiefs win. I'm going to go with the over by 0.5 point. The over is 52.5 over at FanDuel. I'm going to say Chiefs win 30-23. That's 53 points, slight over. That's a cover for the Raiders, though. Spread 9.5. Chiefs have only covered 4 times all year. I'll favor the Raiders in that regard, but I think the Chiefs win outright.
I'm well aware of this. I'm well aware of those trends. I'm well aware of the Chiefs' inability to cover a big number. But if ever there was a week, this kind of feels like it, with so much on the line for Kansas City and so little on the line for the Raiders. I think that makes a difference. I think the Chiefs move the ball at will. I think that they're able to manage their turnovers against a team that doesn't really force a whole lot of them. And I think the Chiefs cruise 38-24. That's a cover. That's the over.
Let us know your predictions on the Big O Tires text line. 785-272-9429 is the text line number. You can also let us know your predictions in the YouTube comments as well. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube channel. Comment section is open. Let us know your thoughts. We've got to take a break. We'll find our weekly winner and what is wrong with you coming up after this on 580 Sports Talk.
What the hell? What the hell?
What the hell was that intro? Am I right? I'm sorry. I shouldn't be on the spot like that. That's rude. I'm leaving in like 6 minutes. That was not very nice to
It'd
do.
be like that sometimes, man.
It's time for What Is Wrong With You here on 580 Sports Talk with Brendan and Dan. Time to find our weekly champion. The current winner for the week, the home burglars in Florida who called 911 because they wanted some help moving the furniture that they were stealing and then thought, hey, maybe they'll give us a ride to the airport as well. When they got a ride, it was right to jail. Two new stories going head-to-head. Can either one take down the 911 burglars? Dan, you're first.
We are actually staying within the world of sports for my What Is Wrong With You today. A story that went public today. Charges filed against a 25-year-old man from Milwaukee on December 14th with felony burglary because he broke in to the Milwaukee Brewers stadium and stole a bunch of stuff from the home clubhouse.
Love it.
The complaint says the man attended a September 8th doubleheader against the San Francisco Giants at American Family Field in Milwaukee. I forgot they were calling it that now, not Miller Park. He said, the man did, that he drank at least 10 beers, which that means he drank a lot more than 10 beers. Let's keep it real.
He lost count at 10.
Yeah, when you get to at least 10, that means you had 10 and then you lost count, but you kept going. Anyhow, stunningly passed out from all that beer he was drinking, woke up and got back inside the stadium by pulling on a door until it opened. Crack security staff at American Family Field. Anyhow, the man found his way to the home clubhouse and started taking stuff from the locker room. A team strength coach said items taken from his office included a laptop, iPods, headphones, a passport, and a credit card. From manager Craig Counsell's office, a shaving kit and a jersey were stolen. What do you want with Craig Counsell's jersey? He's like 5'2".
Can we also go back for a second? Am I supposed to believe that Major League Baseball players have iPods?
Sure. I still have mine.
Do you use it?
I have not used it in many years.
Like, I have an iPod Classic somewhere too. Who's using an iPod?
Maybe it's AirPods.
Oh, okay.
It could be a typo or
Maybe
a misunderstanding in the story. It could be AirPods. That makes a little more sense. But it says headphones too, so I don't know. Maybe he's got a lot of headphones.
Maybe.
Anyhow, yeah, he stole Craig Counsell's jersey, so your 7-year-old can fit in it, I guess. And an equipment manager said that among things stolen from his office included a game-used hat, an autographed bat, a 45-year anniversary signed bat from the 1982 American League champion team, a replica World Series ring, and keys to the team's Arizona spring training facility. 2 game jerseys and a bag with baseballs and pitching devices were taken from the coach's locker room. The man then ordered an Uber to take him home. His roommate told detectives that the man showed up early on September 9th with a duffel bag stuffed with Brewers memorabilia. Investigators recovered most of the items from the man's apartment. The Brewers declined comment. I can't
So
imagine.
he took pitch comms? Is that the pitching device?
Pitching device. Yeah, that's my guess. Yeah, he took pitch comms. He showed up. He's got a bunch of jerseys. He's got a bag of baseballs. I love that he stole a bag of baseballs. He showed up at his house like, put me in, coach. I'm ready to play.
Brandon Woodruff, you think you got a sign for your catcher thinks he's put down the sign for fastball. He's getting a curve.
I think I love the detail of he stole Craig Counsell's shaving kit. Craig Counsell's never shaved in his life. He's perpetually 11 years old. I'm Craig Counsell coming in for quite a beating on this edition of What Is Wrong With You.
That's extremely funny.
Didn't know he ever shaved in his life. What was he going to do with that? He going to go to eBay? Yo, man, I got an exclusive clubhouse item. Craig Counsell's shaving kit. Well, how do you know it's his? Because it's never been used.
That's very funny. Was there no one around? Do they not have security at Miller Park?
You would think, yeah, like after the game, you'd have people like watching the clubhouse.
Hey, where's my iPod Nano?
But no, this visibly drunk man, I'm sure he reeked of booze, was able to walk through and just take an iPad Touch and a passport, a World Series ring, the signed bat. And then, hey, while I'm here, I have a baseball stadium. I'm going to take some baseballs.
Incredibly Wisconsin story. No doubt about that. My story is going to take us to Florida, just south of Orlando, in fact. And we're going to start back on June 28th, where Naco Ray Brown walked into the McCoy Federal Credit Union in Belle Isle, which is south of Orlando, and passed a bank teller a threatening note. Brown, who was just dressed in a baseball cap, sunglasses, a surgical mask, and plastic gloves, told the teller he had a gun and demanded money. He ran away with $4,300 in cash. A witness saw Brown enter a nearby gas station and change his clothes. The witness told the Belle Isle Police Department, who then arrested Brown at the hotel he was staying in. Police recovered the demand note, the stolen cash, and the disguise he wore to rob the bank. All right, pretty simple.
Open and shut.
Brown told officials that he robbed the bank because he was filming a movie in Florida and he ran out of money to pay for the production. There are probably other ways you could do that. Have you tried a bake sale? Have you tried getting a job? Any of those things. He faces 20 years in prison for bank robbery and another 3 years for violating his probation from another case. Dan, do you have any idea what that probation was for? Why he was in jail the first time?
Was it robbing banks?
It was indeed robbing 3 banks. In 2001, a judge had granted him early release in 2020 after he served 19 of 25 years of his initial sentence. Another edition of being married to the game, committed to the grind.
Some people can't leave the game alone, man.
I never thought until the last 12 months I would come across so many stories of people who are just addicted to robbing banks. This guy said, man, I might be out of the game, but I still got it.
Yeah, got that dog in me.
Got out early after robbing 3 banks and decided, you know what? Those first 19 years were nice. How about another 20?
Like the George Foreman of the bank robbing game. Just can't retire. Just can't leave it alone.
Pretty simple story. He was on probation after getting let out after he robbed 3 banks. And then he went and robbed another because he was making a movie and needed cash. Who you got today?
Man, 2 really good stories. Much as I like the Brewers B&E, as Matt in our YouTube comments refers to it as the ballpark B&E, whatever you like. That's just a drunk dude doing something dumb, and also lack of security is wild in that story.
What is wrong with you is the Milwaukee Brewers.
Yeah, why don't the Brewers have better security around their memorabilia from the only time they've ever been good, 1982? You would think they'd have that under lock and key.
Right?
The only
in the team museum.
Right. Much as I like that, guy showing up to rob a bank 20 years after he robbed a bunch of other banks unsuccessfully. Did he clearly he did not sharpen his craft. He did not hone his craft while he was away for those other bank robberies. He didn't get any better. He didn't grind tape. He didn't go back and watch the film and examine where he could have been better. No, poor approach once again, got him arrested. And then the line about, well, I was running out of money to make my movie. What, pray tell, was that movie going to be about?
Ocean's 44, starring Naco Ray Brown.
We had somebody ask exactly that on the Big O Tires text line. What was the movie about?
All right.
Inside Man.
That's our winner today. Does that take down the 911 burglars?
No, I'm going to have to say that's a wire-to-wire winner this week. The fact that they called the police and said, hey, help us move this stolen stuff. And while you're at it, can you take us over to the airport? We got a flight to catch.
That is a tremendous story.
The police will surely be the right people to call to do this for us.
The 911 burglars, they are our first weekly winner for 2023 in What Is Wrong With You. We'll take a break. I am on my way to the Butel Center at Hayden High School for our 580 Preps High School Basketball Game of the Week doubleheader. Should be a great one in the Centennial League tonight for both games. Washburn Rural versus Hayden. Games are scheduled to start at 6 o'clock right after 580 Sports Talk. One way or the other will go directly from Sports Talk to pregame coverage for the game of the week. Dan's got you the rest of the way, talking NFL Week 18 next on 580 Sports Talk.
440 on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero flying the plane solo the rest of the way. Brendan Dworzinski on his way to the Ken Buelltel Activity Center at Hayden High School for our first 580 Preps Friday night game of the week of 2023. Hayden and Washburn Rural should be two barn burners. Brendan and the coach, Larry Latimer, will be on the call this evening. Right here on 580 WIBW. We'll go out there as soon as they're ready for us, which means we will have 580 Sports Talk until they are ready for us. Lots of good stuff coming up in the 5 o'clock hour still. We're going to have our Blued Out of Kansas sports headlines. We'll look ahead to Big 12 basketball this weekend, including K-State and KU on the road. Some other things that we'll be keeping an eye on this weekend as well. That's all coming up in the 5 o'clock hour. YouTube stream is still on. We don't turn it off because one of us leaves, so you can check us out on the YouTube stream. Sports on 580 WIBW is the YouTube screen name or user name, account name. I don't know. I guess I don't really know what you would call it, but you can find us on Twitter by typing into your browser youtube.com/@sportson580. That's the @ symbol, sports on 580. Then you can subscribe to the YouTube page so that our videos will always be available to you on your YouTube app or on the website. So you can check out the show on YouTube and you can comment in the YouTube live chat. And we always appreciate when you do that. You can also continue to interact via the Big O Tires text line, 785-272-9429. That's 785-272-9429. In an instance where you can tell a lot about what kind of NFL weekend to expect if you were really in tune with what's going on with our friends in the desert, so to speak, with what's going on in Las Vegas. If earlier today you opened your FanDuel Sportsbook account on your phone or on the internet, you would have found that you were not able to bet on any NFL games. The entire NFL slate had come down for at least a little while in the immediate aftermath of the news regarding what the NFL was going to do with the AFC playoffs based on whatever the results of the games are this coming week. Most specifically, the results of Chiefs Raiders tomorrow, and then Bills Patriots and Bengals Ravens on Sunday, because those results obviously affect each other very much, but those results also affect what might end up happening in other games that might be played later in the day. So anyway, Vegas took football off the board for a little bit, just for a little bit, and adjusted a couple of lines, and now the football games are back up if you're the type that likes to make a wager. If you do, you should use FanDuel, America's #1 sportsbook, and use my promo code Lucero. But it's a fascinating week 18, because you do have some games that mean a lot, and you have some teams for whom Sunday means absolutely nothing. And the end result of that is we are getting a very strange collection of starting quarterbacks. This is an incomplete list of starting quarterbacks for this week. David Blau, Sam Howell, Jared Stidham, Skylar Thompson, Nathan Peterman, Sam Ehlinger, Sam Howell, not to be confused with Sam Ehlinger, Josh Dobbs. There is a non-zero chance that Chase Daniel joins those ranks. Let me explain. The Chargers-Broncos game kicks off in the late window, but if the Ravens lose to the Bengals, the Chargers would have nothing to play for as far as seeding goes. They would be locked into the number 5 seed, and they would get to play the AFC South winner in the first round of the AFC playoffs, the wildcard round. And so with nothing to play for, the Chargers might then choose, by the time kickoff rolls around for them, to tell Justin Herbert, hey, why don't you take the day off? We're not going to put you at risk. We're finally getting healthy. We're finally starting to get rolling. You go ahead, you take a powder, and we'll let the ancient backup quarterback Chase Daniel play in this one. Very realistic possibility that that ends up happening on Sunday afternoon. And that is reflected in the betting action for that game, where the Chargers open the week as favorites and are currently 3-point underdogs to the woeful Denver Broncos. Because the anticipation is that the Ravens, who are 9.5-point underdogs to the Bengals and will not have Lamar Jackson, that has been confirmed, will lose, which would leave then the Chargers nothing to play for and make it very likely that they rest their starters against the Broncos, who might have a little motivation to try and end a bummy season on a high note, maybe send Clippy out on a winning note. Jerry Rosberg, win one for the 71-year-old previously retired special teams coach who's been their interim coach. So if there is a storyline beyond all of the playoff positioning that will be decided on Saturday and Sunday, it is lots of backup quarterbacks. Lots and lots of quarterbacks that if you heard they were starting a game in week 1, you would have assumed catastrophe. You would have assumed like COVID had returned and eaten away at quarterback depth across the league. So some of these matchups for this week, not all that enticing, but there are a couple that should be pretty interesting. Obviously, 2 games tomorrow. We talked at length about Chiefs Raiders. Titans Jaguars is for all the marbles in the AFC South and probably for a playoff berth. It's hard to imagine either team slipping in the back door to a wild card spot. Something really strange would have to happen for that to occur. But Titans Jaguars, Jags are 6.5-point favorites in that game. I think they're going to win, and I think if I'm an AFC playoff team, I'm rooting for Jacksonville. And the reason I'm rooting for Jacksonville, not because I don't think they're a better team. Right now, as presently constructed, they're a better team than Tennessee. And that's just it. That's why if I'm an AFC playoff team, I'm rooting for I'd rather see Tennessee, but if we see Jacksonville in the playoffs, they're a less experienced playoff team, and I think that the way they play is less suited for the playoffs than the way the Titans play. I hate the thought of it being a January game and it's cold and it's nasty, and then you got to tackle Derrick Henry. It's not fun. Or that nasty defense is coming downhill at you. Tennessee still got a terrific defense. Jeffrey Sims is going to be healthy for Saturday's game. I think Tennessee can win it, but I just think they've been too beat up in the long run, and they aren't the team that they were earlier this season when even with Malik Willis starting, they could give the Chiefs everything they could handle. And Jacksonville, they're rolling. I think they're looking primed to end this season with a division championship. Maybe that means Doug Peterson's coach of the year. I have no idea who's going to win the NFL's coach of the year. Absolutely no idea. I think if I had a vote, if they let me vote, I would vote for Brian Daboll, because I think the Giants are the least likely of the playoff participants to have actually made the playoffs, given the quality of their roster. But if you want to say, it's Nick Sirianni for, getting the best out of Jalen Hurts and making the Eagles the likely number 1 seed, I wouldn't argue with you. If you say it's Kyle Shanahan, they look like maybe the NFC favorites, depending on who you ask, with Brock Purdy at quarterback, and they've navigated injuries and trades and lots of quarterback injuries to be what they are. I would support your vote for Kyle Shanahan. If you want to vote for Doug Peterson, I'd support that. A lot of worthy candidates. They can only give away one award. That's going to be really interesting, I think, who ends up winning Coach of the Year. The Sunday slate, I'll get to in a second, but this is a good text, and I want to get to this question on the text line from the 785. Are the 2022 Jags the same as the 2021 Bengals? I'm going to say no. I'm going to say no to that. I don't think they're as explosive offensively as the Bengals. The Bengals are so dangerous because they could just score. They can drop a house on you in terms of points. And while I like Trevor Lawrence, and he's obviously grown a ton in his second year as a starter, and while I think Travis Etienne's a good player, Christian Kirk's a good player, like they don't have great at those spots. Like they're not quite. They might be like the great value brand 2021 Bengals. I don't quite see it the same way. I think the Bengals defense better coached too than the Jacksonville defense. That's not to say the Jags are a bunch of bums on defense either, but yeah, I don't quite see the parallel, but that's an interesting thought. And I appreciate the question on the Big O Tires text line. The Sunday slate, Jets, Dolphins, the Skylar Thompson game. You're going to be able to watch that if you live within the sound of our voice here, for the most part. If you're in Kansas anyway, that game will be on TV. You can watch Skylar Thompson get a start with his team's playoff hopes on the line. Joe Flacco is starting for the Jets. The over-under in that game is 37.5. That feels high. Dolphins are free falling, and I hope for Skylar Thompson's sake that he plays well at the very least. I would hate for Skylar Thompson to be the reason that Miami doesn't win. I hope he plays well. I do. I have no idea who's going to win that game. That matchup of quarterbacks, no idea who's going to win that game. Cleveland is at Pittsburgh. Pittsburgh's 2.5-point favorites. I think Pittsburgh's going to win. They need a lot of help, but they could feasibly snag the 7th seed in the AFC playoffs. They're playing well. They're playing hard for Mike Tomlin. Kenny Pickett. I was very iffy on Kenny Pickett when he was drafted. He looks like he might be, I'm not going to go crazy and call him a top 10 quarterback, but he looks like he could maybe start in this league. And from a draft class where I don't know if we've got any other long-term starters in the league, we needed that for Kenny Pickett. So he's looked good in the clutch anyway in the last 2 games. He's not scared of the moment. And it's another big moment for the Steelers. 2.5-point favorites at home against the Browns. A must-win for them. Houston plays Indianapolis. I do not want to talk about that football game. Who cares? Tampa Bay at Atlanta. I also do not want to talk about that football game. Tampa Bay has already clinched the NFC South, so nothing on the line there. Carolina at New Orleans. I never have to think about the NFC South again. The 2022 NFC South. I don't ever have to think about it for the rest of my life after Sunday. Thank God for that. New England's at Buffalo. That's an important one. And anybody saying they know how the Bills are going to perform on Sunday is lying. It is impossible to predict because there are 53 different guys on that team, and all of them experienced a very traumatic event on Monday, and all of them, I'm sure, have been uplifted by the continued good news surrounding their teammate Damar Hamlin. But what will it be like for them when the rubber meets the road and they've got to play a football game, particularly one with high stakes? If I said I knew, if I said I could predict it with any accuracy or confidence, that would be me lying to you. And I try not to be in the business of lying to you folks. So I had no idea what we're going to see from Buffalo, but they will be motivated. So will the Patriots. Patriots are a win and need some help to get in team, but they'll play hard with their season on the line. Minnesota's at Chicago. Nathan Peterman is starting for the Bears. What a blessing. What a blessing from above to get in the final week of the NFL regular season to get to wager against Nathan Peterman. Bears are only 5.5-point underdogs. The Vikings are going to stomp them. Even though there's not much to play for the Vikings, the Chicago Bears are starting Nathan Peterman at quarterback. Ravens, Bengals, we mentioned that one. The Bengals are another team that experienced trauma on Monday night. And we can't diminish that, even though it was not their teammate. They were still on hand for that traumatic event. How have they processed that? How have they been prepared? Man 1 through man 53 on that roster. I'd be lying if I told you I knew how they will react. But that's a big game for them, and if they win, they don't have to worry about a coin flip determining where they're going to play a playoff game. So plenty on the line for them and for the Ravens, too. That's a big one on Sunday afternoon. Eagles-Giants, matters for the Eagles. They win. They're locked into the number 1 seed. They're 14-point favorites against the Giants team that is locked into the 6th seed. The late window is also including the Rams and the Seahawks. Seahawks need a win and help. They are 6-point favorites against the Rams. I think the Seahawks will win. Maybe that's me being a homer, but that might be my last chance to be a homer about the Seahawks this year. I think they will win at home. Broncos, Chargers, I already mentioned. 49ers, Cardinals. 49ers are already locked in. Cardinals are starting David Blau. 14-point spread should tell you all you need to know about that. Dallas, -7 at Washington. The Commanders are starting Sam Howell. If I had to guess, that will be Ron Rivera's final game in D.C. Not that I think he's a terrible coach or a bad guy or whatever. I just think that's kind of run its course, and the Commanders are going to move on. And then the night game, Lions-Packers. Weird quirk of scheduling. The Lions are eliminated if the Seahawks win. So the Seahawks winning would give the Lions less to play for against the team they need to beat to get the Seahawks into the playoffs. They should have played those games at the same time. Bad job by the NFL. But anyhow, Lions-Packers, it's a home game. It's Aaron Rodgers. It's hard to imagine he loses to the Lions at home with something on the line. That's a 4.5-point spread. Again, all odds courtesy of FanDuel. That's going to do it for this 4 o'clock hour. It's an NFL weekend where, obviously, if you're local, you've probably got some interest in that Chiefs game, and there are some other games of interest as well. But there's either A pluses or Fs on this schedule. Just games that are really intriguing and games that are just a dog's breakfast. We got headlines and much more coming up in the 5 o'clock hours. We take you up to high school hoops. You're listening to 580 Sports Talk. get it. Final hour of the day, final hour of the week on 580 Sports Talk. Hope everybody has had a great Friday and is looking forward to the weekend. First weekend of 2023. You made it. Congratulations. Thanks for hanging out with us here on 580 Sports Talk, whether you're listening on AM 580 or FM 1049. Checking us out online, 580wibw.com, or watching on the YouTube stream. Hi to all of you at youtube.com/@sportson580. If you subscribe to us on YouTube, you'll be able to find all of our video content that much easier. But you can search for Sports on 580 WIBW, and that will take you to our video content if you prefer to do it that way. You can also listen back to past hours of the show. We archive hour by hour in podcast form at our website on the podcast page at 580wibw.com, and our video archive is available on YouTube as well. So we hope you're enjoying the program today. Brendan Dworzinski is getting set up at Hayden High School, Ken Buell Activity Center. It's a great classic city rivalry on the hardwood tonight. Hayden hosting Washburn Rural for girls and boys basketball action. Brendan and the coach, Larry Latimer, will have the call tonight, and we are taking you up to pregame coverage here on 580 Sports Talk. We'll talk a little college hoops later on this hour. KU and K-State with road games in Big 12 play coming up. We'll also look ahead to some other things going on this sports weekend. But we began the 5 o'clock hours, we always do, with with the Blue Dot of Kansas sports headlines. They are brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Home of the Peak Performance Safety Check. They check your furnace, AC, and plumbing once a year, all for one low price. Visit them on the web and see what they can do for you. BlueDotKansas.com. That's the word dot in Blue Dot Kansas, then period for the other .com. Let's start with the ongoing national news. That is the remarkable ongoing recovery of Buffalo Bills safety Damar Hamlin, who of course collapsed during Monday Night Football earlier this week. You have been hearing about it all day long on CBS News updates at the top of the hour. But just to reiterate, the news could not be any more positive. Hamlin has had his breathing tube removed, and this morning was able to speak with his care team, his family, and via FaceTime, his Buffalo Bills teammates. It was a quick Zoom meeting, I guess. They described it as FaceTime in some reporting. They describe it as a Zoom call in this ESPN article, but he was able to see his teammates and talk to them. And as you can imagine, that was very uplifting for the other members of the Buffalo Bills. According to a statement released by the Bills, Hamlin, quote, continues to progress remarkably in his recovery. Per the physicians, his neurological function remains intact and he has been able to talk. The football career is still certainly secondary to Damar Hamlin being able to resume a normal life, to walk out of the hospital and to live a happy and healthy life. And again, we're not 100% sure. Nobody is. But it does feel like we're getting closer to that possibility. And that is just the most wonderful possible news. So the news continues to be very uplifting surrounding Damar Hamlin. In related news, Hamlin's number 3 jersey has quickly become the number 1 selling jersey at Fanatics, which is the NFL's apparel partner. The CEO of Fanatics, Michael Rubin, even reached out to New York Jets cornerback Sauce Gardner, who was on Twitter earlier this week, asking if somebody could hook him up with a Damar Hamlin jersey to wear during pregame warmups this week because his Fanatics order wasn't going to get there on time. Hey, Sauce, we've all been there, right? Well, not all of us are as well known as Sauce Gardner and get the CEO of Fanatics to say, hey, I got you covered. So Sauce Gardner will be one of many, many NFL players who will be doing some form of pregame or warm-up tribute to Damar Hamlin before these Week 18 games. Fanatics has produced 150 T-shirts for each home team to share with the visiting team to wear during pregame warm-up Sunday. The shirts will say, "Love for Damar." As of Friday morning, Fanatics was selling Hamlin's jersey at such a high rate that they have decided to contribute the profits to Hamlin. And that collection is up over $400,000 with the NFL and the NFLPA agreeing to contribute their royalties and Fanatics contributing their profits from the sales. That money will be donated to Hamlin's recovery. So just continues to be a really, really neat story and a neat response to a horrible story. Probably a better way to put it. And continuing to root for more good news for Damar Hamlin moving forward. In other NFL news, we talked about it at the top of the show, but just to reiterate, the NFL's owners did vote through a plan for a possible neutral site AFC championship game given certain circumstances. I'm going to put the graphic back up for those of you who are on YouTube right now so that you can see it. I'm going to go ahead and cover my face with the neutral site scenarios for the AFC championship game based on the winners of Week 18. Here's what you need to know from a Kansas City Chiefs perspective. If the Kansas City Chiefs win on Saturday and the Buffalo Bills lose, then the AFC championship game, no matter what, will be held at Arrowhead Stadium. No matter what, because Kansas City will be the 1 seed and Buffalo will be either the 2 or the 3 seed, depending on the outcome of the Buffalo-Cincinnati game. Here are the scenarios under which Kansas City would not host the AFC championship game. If they won and Buffalo won, so if Kansas City wins, Buffalo wins, and Kansas City plays Buffalo, the AFC championship game will be at a neutral site. If Kansas City loses and New England beats Buffalo, so if both the Chiefs and the Bills lose, and then Kansas City played Buffalo in the conference championship game, it would be at a neutral site. If Kansas City and Buffalo both lose and Cincinnati wins against Baltimore, then a potential Kansas City-Cincinnati AFC championship game would be played at a neutral site. In all other scenarios, those are the only scenarios. There are five total scenarios, 4 of them involving Buffalo, 1 of them involving Cincinnati, in which Kansas City would play at a neutral site for the AFC championship game if they ended up the number 1 overall seed. So that is the layman's terms. Again, the graphic is still up over my face on the YouTube page. If you go back and you watch the YouTube archive, you can find it. Also, Tom Pelissero of the NFL Network tweeted it out earlier, so that's where you can find it if you want to take your time digging up that graphic and absorb it a little bit. But that is the news from the National Football League. Moving to college football, a couple of KU Jayhawks making decisions on their football futures. Yesterday, Lonnie Phelps, the standout defensive end who made a big impact after transferring in from Miami of Ohio this past season, announced that he would declare for the NFL draft. Phelps was certainly KU's best pass rusher throughout the 2022 season. Wish him all the best in his NFL draft pursuits. Meanwhile, Jason Bean made official what had been speculated the last handful of days. He's coming back. Bean has 1 more year of college eligibility and says he'll return to be a part of the Jayhawk program. Now, obviously, there's no realistic path that doesn't involve Jalen Daniels being injured for Bean to play a lot of quarterback in his extra year at Kansas. So perhaps, as we speculated earlier this week, that may mean that Bean's role is more of an offensive weapon, maybe gets some carries, maybe lines up at wide receiver, continues to be part of gadget plays that Andy Kotelnicki loves to run. But Jason Bean is coming back to Kansas for another season. We stay with college football for our next headline. You may recall on yesterday's Blue Dot of Kansas headlines that Michigan head coach Jim Harbaugh released a statement yesterday saying that he expects to be the head coach at Michigan next year, although, and I'm quoting here, no one knows what the future holds. Well, I'm pretty sure Harbaugh and everybody else at Michigan knew what the immediate future held, because right as we were going off the air yesterday, news broke that the NCAA is investigating Michigan football for alleged violations during the COVID-19 recruiting dead period. Here are those big, bad, terrible, scary violations that Michigan may have committed. Impermissible contact with recruits, use of a defensive analyst for on-field coaching activities, and, according to some internet rumor mongering, Jim Harbaugh buying some of his players hamburgers at a restaurant called the Brown Jug during a COVID dead period. Again, not the worst things in the world here. Those are all level 2 violations. There is one level 1 violation that is under investigation, and that involves Harbaugh himself perhaps not being cooperative with NCAA enforcement staff. On the one hand, you want to be cooperative. Being cooperative can get you out of a lot of trouble. Ask, a bunch of college basketball programs who have cooperated and not really gotten in that much trouble. Also, it could very well be that Jim Harbaugh's response to, hey, your program's going to be in trouble because you fed some kids some burgers, was, really? Go to hell. And that's considered not cooperating. So who's to say? These don't seem to be that big of a deal in the grand scheme of things. Maybe Michigan loses some scholarships. Maybe Harbaugh's got to serve a suspension if he does indeed return to Michigan. These are not the weight or gravity of allegations that would chase Jim Harbaugh instantly back to the NFL. But remember the wording of the report earlier this week? I'm trying to remember if it was Pete Thamel or who it was. I'm trying to remember who it was that reported that if Jim Harbaugh left, and the way they worded it, I'm paraphrasing here, if Jim Harbaugh left, it wouldn't be because of frustration with the NIL or the transfer portal, but it would be frustration with college football in general. That was the way it was put. Gosh, I think it was Thamel, but I'm not 100% sure. But the idea that Jim Harbaugh's frustration with college football in general, and now that makes a lot more sense, doesn't it? That Jim Harbaugh may be just a little bit frustrated with the idea that buying a hamburger for some kids at a local restaurant would be a violation. I'd be frustrated with that too. Wasn't Rick Majerus, the late Rick Majerus, didn't he get in trouble at Utah for doing something like that? Like a player's father had died, so he bought him a sandwich, bought him a bagel. It was a bagel. I think it was a bagel. And then the NCAA had to come and investigate that as an impermissible benefit. Like, justify your continued existence, NCAA. Justify your existence while you still have an existence to justify. We keep it moving on the Blue Dot of Kansas headlines, brought to you by Blue Dot of Kansas. Big transfer news. One star running back is going from one USC to another USC. South Carolina's Marshawn Lloyd led the South Carolina Gamecocks in rushing this past season with 573 yards and 9 touchdowns as a true sophomore. He is headed west to join Lincoln Riley at USC. USC was sort of transfer U in Riley's first season. Most of their offensive skill guys were transfers, including their top 2 running backs, their top 2 wide receivers, and, of course, the Heisman Trophy winner, quarterback Caleb Williams. So the ongoing transfer portal mastery of Lincoln Riley continues. That's going to put a wrap on our... No, it's not. I got one more. I got one more headline for you. I forgot this was in my email, and I wanted to share it with you. One more headline, one more Blue Dot of Kansas headline. I'm sorry, I lied just now. One more Blue Dot of Kansas sports headline, and it is this. If you have been thinking about buying tickets for Kansas State men's basketball games, you have waited too long, because K-State Athletics announced Friday that 3 upcoming home games have been sold out. Saturday, January 14th against Texas Tech, Tuesday, January 17th against Kansas, and Saturday, February 4th against Texas are all officially sold out, and tickets are only available through K-State's official secondary ticket partner, StubHub. There are a very limited number of tickets available for upcoming games against Florida, Saturday, January 28th, and Iowa State, Saturday, February 18th. So if you're wanting to go and see the Tang Gang, your best crack at getting tickets might be for their next home game. That's this coming Tuesday, a 6 p.m. tip-off against Oklahoma State. that might be your best shot to get a chance to get tickets on the primary market and go and see the Wildcats. So we have talked about whether or not K-State basketball fever was going to be catching on beyond the students and on to the K-State family and the fan base there in Manhattan, the local fan base and the statewide fan base. Looks like that answer is a resounding yes. The Tech game, the KU game, the Texas game, all sold out. That is our final Blue Dot of Kansas headline, sponsored by Blue Dot of Kansas. Check them out online. See what they can do for your furnace, for your AC, for your plumbing, for your residence or your business. See what they can do for you at blue.kansas.com. We're going to take a quick break. We'll come back and we'll talk a little more K-State hoops and KU hoops. 2 road games for the in-state teams in the Big 12 coming up, and we will preview them next on 580 Sports Talk.
Grip it and rip it at the T-Box.
.524 here on 580 Sports Talk. Dan Lucero with you. We are taking you up to our first 580 Preps Friday night high school basketball game of the week of 2023. Brendan Dworzinski and Larry Latimer are on standby at the Ken Buell Activity Center to bring you action tonight between Hayden and Washburn Rural. Girls game first, boys game to follow. We hope you keep it locked right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9 for high school hoops. They are in the second half of the JV game presently, so we expect to be bringing you high school hoops coverage by the time the 6 o'clock hour rolls along. But we still have a little time together, and we'll make good use of it here on 580 Sports Talk. You can comment on the YouTube stream in the comments of the live chat. You can also hit us on the Big O Tires text line at 785-272-9429. Yeah, we had a guy Mark in the YouTube chat ask if it's okay to listen to the radio and watch us on YouTube. The answer to that is unequivocally yes. You may listen on the radio and you may watch the YouTube. That is totally fine. I don't know actually how that times out. I guess I'd be a little interested how that exactly times out. Like if we're ahead of, we shouldn't be, honestly. It should be, we shouldn't have a whole lot of latency between the audio feed on your radio and what you're seeing on the video. But I guess I don't know. I've never tried. I've never listened to the radio while I was on it. That's a little tough to do. But however you are consuming our show, it's very, very cool that you are doing so, especially to wrap up your week. And I appreciate you being along here for 580 Sports Talk. KU and K-State in action on the hardwood this weekend. 2 games, both tipping off at 5 p.m., right around when the first half of Chiefs Raiders should be wrapping up. Both games will be on ESPN+. We'll start with the Cats because, of course, we're going to have K-State basketball right here all day long, really, on 580 WIBW of the women's game earlier in the afternoon, and then the men's contest with a 5 p.m. tip. That means a 4 p.m. pregame for the Wildcats from Waco as they take on the 19th-ranked Baylor Bears. It is, of course, a delicious storyline. Jerome Tang's return to Waco, where he spent 19 years as Scott Drew's right-hand man. Waco has not been a real fun place for K-State basketball recently. The final scores in the last 3 games in Waco for K-State have been 74-49, 107-59, and 85-66. That's a little more competitive, but still a pretty, 19-point loss. It's not a lot of fun to go through. Those 3 games are part of a 7-game skid for K-State in this series. But this team, this Baylor team, is not that Baylor team. You know where Baylor has been ranked in each of those 7 matchups? I can tell you exactly where Baylor has been ranked in those matchups if I can find the game notes. I had them and then I lost them. So give me a moment to find those game notes again. Here they are. So the last 7 meetings, all losses for K-State. K-State hasn't been ranked for any of these. Baylor, on the other hand, going back to February 2020, was ranked 1st, 2nd, 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 4th, and 10th. Last February, they were ranked 10th, and they will come in ranked 19th in this one. But again, big difference between a top 5 Leviathan and this 19th ranked team that feels likely to maybe drop out of the top 25 entirely after their loss to TCU on Wednesday night. Now, if they beat Kansas State, they'll probably stick in the bottom of the top 25. I expect Kansas State to dent the top 25 this week, even if they lose in Waco, as long as they don't lose, they don't get 30-piece like they have in recent memory in Waco. I think that they will also be in the top 25. But this is not the same Baylor team. This is a Baylor team that is probably one of Scott Drew's weakest on the defensive end in quite some time. They are 64th in adjusted defense in the Ken Pom rankings. For the record, K-State is 43rd. So this is a really good offensive Baylor team, and you would expect that. They've got terrific guard play, right? Adam Flagler, L.J. Cryer, and then Keontae George on the wings. That's as good a 3-headed scoring monster as Baylor has had, even if you include, their national championship team in 2021. They might not have had a top 3 scoring-wise, playmaking-wise, as good as Flagler, Cryer, and George. But what they don't have, they're not bad in the post. I mean, Flo Thamba's still kicking around, right? But they are not what they have been on the interior in recent years. I think that's fair to say. And I think their defensive numbers kind of reflect that. They got blown out at Hilton Coliseum on New Year's Eve and then had the 1-point loss to TCU where they gave up 88 points. That's what's really been the most surprising thing for me when it comes to Baylor is that they have given up big numbers of points. Now, they're still a really good team. To say, they're not as good as they've been, we're talking about a team that, again, has been to the very top of the mountain as national champions. And they've played a difficult schedule. They have a 5-point win over UCLA. They have a 1-point win over Gonzaga. They have a 7-point loss to a very good Virginia team. Their other losses to a Marquette team that I think if they aren't already in the top 25, they will be. It won't be long before they are. They're playing really well and they're scoring a lot of points, but they put a lot of points on Baylor. They put 96 points on Baylor. Some of the point totals that they're giving up against really inferior competition is what's been surprising. They gave up 86 to Virginia. How do you ever give up 86 points in a game to the Virginia Cavaliers, who would rather not score? They give 86. So that kind of tells you everything you need to know, that Baylor is still very good, but they are not quite Baylor. However, I think Scott Drew's pretty aware of that. And I think Scott Drew will look at a team that gave up 88 points in a loss on Wednesday night and look at an opponent coming in that scored 116 on Tuesday night in a win at Texas. And he's going to have a pretty consistent defensive effort for 40 minutes. And I would expect that Jerome Tang, with his intimate knowledge of what Baylor likes to do and what sets they like to run and all of that good stuff, after 19 years spent at the right hand of Scott Drew, I think he's going to have his team defensively ready to go. So if I had to guess, this is not going to be another 116 to 103 kind of basketball game for Kansas State. I think this game turns into a grind. I think this game turns into more of what you would think it would be, given the reputation of Baylor as a defensive program, given Jerome Tang's reputation, what he wanted to try and imprint on his K-State team. I think we will see a lower scoring game. I think we're going to see something in the 60s. Again, I'll come back on Monday if I was wrong, and I'll admit I was wrong. But this feels like a game that will be determined by defense, determined by getting some stops, a game that maybe doesn't get to a tempo that suits Baylor's backcourt, and maybe that also doesn't suit Kansas State. This is going to be a tough one for the Wildcats, and a big ask for them to win it. A real big ask. They go out and win this, they'll be 3-0 in the conference with 3 top 25 wins in their first 3 conference games. And then, again, like we said earlier on the program when we did change my mind, K-State wins this game. We stop talking about, are they going to make the tournament? And we start talking about, how high can their seed number get? Where can they be seeded? So that's what's at stake for Kansas State. It would certainly not be a bad loss. I kind of think Baylor will get them. But if K-State comes out and shoots even a little bit like they did against Texas, then the game could get to a tempo and a flow that I think K-State's better when the game flows faster. I think they're better in a transition game, in an up-tempo game, in a game that gets to the 70s or the 80s. And if this is another one like that, I think that's an advantage for Kansas State. I suspect, though, that it won't be. I think both coaches will have both of their defenses locked in. So that's K-State. KU tipping off at the exact same time, 5 o'clock on Saturday night, as they take on the West Virginia Mountaineers. KU's got 3 straight wins in the series, but they've actually got a losing record at the WVU Coliseum all time. 4-6 in that building. And West Virginia's coming in desperate. They are 0-2 in the league, despite coming in. They were 4th best in the KenPom in the conference when they entered conference play. And now they've surpassed Baylor, or more accurately, Baylor has dropped behind them. But West Virginia's top 20 team in the KenPom. They might be 0-2, and they might have a bunch of guys who you don't readily associate with West Virginia because Huggy Bear had to rebuild his roster with some transfers. But they're really good. They can score at a high level. They've got some size. Johnny Bell Jr., they can bang a little bit. Emmett Matthews is a matchup problem at 6'10". Eric Stevenson can shoot it. Like, West Virginia's good. They're tough, and they're going to be desperate. And they're going to be playing at home. And so Kansas has to do 2 things really well against West Virginia. 2 things that they've always had to do really well against West Virginia if they want to get out of there with a win. Number 1 is rebound. West Virginia rebounds their tails off. Can Kansas be a good rebounding team? I think they can be. What they give up in size, with KJ Adams playing most of the minutes at the 5 at 6'7", I think that they make up for, because Jalen Wilson's a good rebounder and Kevin McCullough's a good rebounder. And why is this kept? Grady Dick's a pretty good rebounder. I know Fran Fraschilla was talking about that on Tuesday night. Like, Grady Dick is very instinctual as a rebounder of the basketball. Like, he's a better rebounder than you give him credit, than people might look at him and assume that he is. So I think Kansas can hang in on the glass and keep West Virginia from getting a bunch of second, third chance opportunities that they're going to need. And the other thing Kansas has to do is take care of the ball against West Virginia's pressure. And that's where having veterans helps a lot. That's where having DeJuan Harris, who's been around, who's been through this, who's played against that team, that's where having him helps. That's where having Jalen Wilson helps. That's where having a veteran like Kevin McCullough helps. That's where having a good passer out of the post like KJ Adams really helps. I think for West Virginia to win this game, they're going to have to dominate the glass. They're going to have to force a bunch of turnovers. But I think Kansas is equipped to avoid that. I think Kansas wins on Saturday. I feel better about their chances than I do about K-State's chances. That's more of a reflection about the caliber of opposition that I think they're playing against and the caliber of team. Like, I think right now, I still think KU's better than K-State, even though K-State's playing great. But it won't come easy because KU's 2-0, and Bill Self said this in his remarks earlier this week. Look, they're 2-0, and they could easily be 0-2, and West Virginia's 0-2 could very easily be 2-0. I mean, they went to overtime in Manhattan, and then their game against Oklahoma State was tight. Or Oklahoma State was tight. They ended up losing that game by 7, which for this league is a blowout. Right? The way the Big 12 has gone to this point, a 7-point game is a stomping because those games have been so very close throughout. Other Big 12 games going on Saturday include Texas going to Oklahoma State, their first game since Chris Beard was officially fired. Both teams are 1-1 in the Big 12. Iowa State at TCU is the only ranked versus ranked matchup this week. So the most undefeated teams there could be in the league by the end of Saturday night will be 3 because Iowa State and TCU are both 2-0. TCU is the 5.5-point favorite in that game. That kind of that feels like a big number for what we know about this league, with 6 of the 10 games so far in the Big 12 either having been one possession games or having gone to overtime like K-State West Virginia did. But that's interesting. I like TCU. I think I'm more and more, it feels to me like TCU and Kansas State are the most direct threats, depending on how quickly Texas Tech can get healthy. The most direct threat to KU at the top of the Big 12 conference. And I mean, Texas is right there, but Texas is going to look different with Rodney Terry as the interim head coach and the acting head coach now. That's going to be different. They're going to be a different team. They're going to play a little bit differently. They're not going to look like we thought they were going to look. So I'll need to see what they look like under Rodney Terry in league play for a little while longer before I affirmatively stamp Texas as a league contender. Because they gave up 116 points to Kansas State. Absolutely remarkable stuff. But let's downshift from that a little bit. We're going to take a break here on 580 Sports Talk. On the other side, some other things going on in the sports world this weekend that I'll have my eye on. That's next here on 580 Sports Talk. We're gearing up to get out of here on this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Brendan Dworzynski and Larry Latimer are in the ready position at the Ken Buelltel Activity Center at Hayden High School. Our 580 Preps Friday night basketball game of the week. First one of 2023, Hayden and Washburn Rural. And we will have coverage of that here shortly on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. So thought we would bring you the quick final word for this one. My final word is it's final week of the NFL season, but there's all kinds of other great stuff going on this weekend that I want to let you know about. There is high school basketball in the area tonight, Rural and Hayden, right here on 580 WIBW and FM 104.9. But also tonight, Topeka High playing host to Emporia in Centennial League action. That should be a really good girls game. Emporia, one of the best teams in 5A. Topeka High, one of the top in 6A. That'll be a really fun girls game in particular tonight at the Dungeon. UKC action. Shawnee Heights is at Lansing tonight. Topeka West is on the road as well at DeSoto. In the Meadowlark Conference, Highland Park is at Atchison. The boys game is the main event in that one with both Highland Park and Atchison undefeated. Atchison is 5-0. Highland Park is 3-0. An early season test for Mike Williams' Scots. Care Paravel's on the road tonight, too, as well. Just a quick look at the city's teams that are in play tonight. Care Paravel's at Kansas City Christian. Washburn basketball is on the air tomorrow over on Classic Country 106.9. We have got the Washburn Ichabods, and yours truly will be on the broadcast one more time to fill in for the voice of the Ichabods, Jake LeBon, as he returns from his safari. We will have coverage for you on Classic Country 106.9 of Washburn basketball starting at 12:45 tomorrow afternoon with the pregame show. The women's game at 1, the men's game at 3 as Washburn hosts Lincoln University. The Blue Tigers coming to town for MIAA play. Men's game should be really good. Lincoln is much improved from their 4-win team of last year. Bunch of Division I and JUCO transfers into that program. They've got 7 wins this year, including, well, not including because it didn't count on their record, but in an exhibition game, Lincoln beat Kansas City, UMKC, beat them back in November. So that's a talented bunch of guys. Washburn men hoping to build off of their win last night over Central Missouri. Washburn women hoping to get back on the winning track. They lost to 7th-ranked Central Missouri last night at Lee Arena. They take on a Lincoln team who they have never lost to, ever in history. 33 games, 33 wins against Lincoln in women's basketball. Laura Westling's bunch will try and keep that streak alive tomorrow afternoon, and I will be on the call. So you can join me for that doubleheader. We'll have the coverage again on our sister station, Classic Country 106.9. I mentioned earlier, we've got K-State basketball here on 580 WIBW FM 104.9 tomorrow with the women's game and then the men's game to follow. That means the Chiefs are going to be on our sister station, the big 94.5 Country, 94.5 FM. That is where you can hear the Chiefs game tomorrow, a 3:30 kickoff for the Chiefs and the Raiders. Pregame coverage starting at 2 o'clock over on 94.5 FM, the big 94.5 Country, with Mitch Holtzes and the crew on the call of that one. A little programming note for you there. Also this weekend, obviously, NFL Week 18, pretty big deal. But there's another football game on Saturday. The FCS National Championship game. North Dakota State, South Dakota State. North Dakota State's won 9 titles. They keep ripping them off year in, year out, the Bison. They take on their in-state rival who has never won a title, but has won the last 3 Dakota Marker games. Could the 4th time be a charm in the Natty for San Diego State or South Dakota State? I wrote it down as SDSU. I knew I was going to call it San Diego State once. I knew I was going to do that. Write it out longhand next time, Lucero. Come on. Can South Dakota State do it in the biggest game of them all? Or will North Dakota State continue their dominion atop FCS football? That's a 1 p.m. kick on ESPN on Sunday and maybe worth an alternate screen. With the Chiefs not playing, why not check out the Bison and the Jackrabbits? We've got a Go South Dakota State in on the YouTube chat from Mark. It'd be cool to see the Jackrabbits win it for the first time. But it's hard to bet against North Dakota State. As banged up as they are, they're pretty beat up. They're not quite what they've been on defense in the last few years. They're not quite the juggernaut that they've been, but they're also a program that generally finds ways to win. So that'll be a good game. That'll be worth checking out. I've got an extra screen that I can devote to the Dakota marker in the national championship game. That's pretty cool. Also this weekend, obviously mentioned KU and K-State, some significant college basketball matchups there. College basketball matchups of intrigue elsewhere include Arkansas at Auburn on Saturday night. That's a ranked versus ranked matchup on the SEC network. I'm trying to see if there's any on Sunday that are particularly significant, and not really. Houston-Cincinnati on Sunday afternoon should be a good game. Number 2 Houston. Cincinnati always gives them trouble. Cincinnati drummed Wichita State earlier this week. It's gone south in a hurry for Wichita State under Isaac Brown. I kind of have a feeling they're going to be looking for a new head coach by the time this season is up. PGA Tour season's back. Century Tournament of Champions is underway. I have reached the point in my life where I like to watch golf on television. I don't make that admission embarrassed. I make that admission with pride that I am now of an age where I can find the Golf Channel. I know the number to punch into my clicker to find the Golf Channel, and I can sit and watch golf shots and be very content. It's great ambient noise, and it's also, for me, really fun to watch. I like to play golf. My wife was an accomplished high school golfer. Her dad, my father-in-law, is a high school golf coach in the area. So we get down with some golf. We get down with some golf in the Lucero household. And I might check out the Tournament of Champions this weekend. No Rory McIlroy, but a star-studded field all the same in that one. There's FA Cup round 4 if you're into soccer. Round 4 of the FA Cup across England. All kinds of matches will be on bright and early on your Saturday morning and on your Sunday as well. If you want to watch a little football of the overseas variety, there's all kinds of good stuff happening this weekend in sports. And I hope sincerely that you will enjoy your sports weekend. If it sounds like I'm vamping on the final word here on 580 Sports Talk, I guess I am a little bit. We are waiting for word from the Ken Buelltel Activity Center that the action has concluded for the evening in the junior varsity games. And once that is the case, we will send it out to Brendan Dworzinski and Larry Latimer, who will have the call of our 580 Preps high school doubleheader game of the week between Hayden and Washburn Rural. And we have gotten word that they will be ready in just a moment. So what we are going to go ahead and do is wrap things up here. If you're on the video, you can see me looking at my phone. Yes, that's a text from Brendan Dworzinski. We got the all clear, so we're going to go ahead and wrap up this edition of 580 Sports Talk. Our thanks to Matt Derrick for joining us. Our thanks to you, the listener, the viewer, however you are absorbing this program. Our great thanks to you for joining us. We hope you will join us on Monday from 3 to 6 on the next edition of 580 Sports Talk. High School Hoops is next. Until then, for Brendan Dworzinski, I'm Dan Lucero. This has been 580 Sports Talk. Have a great weekend, everybody.